Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Nightly Scroll. I'm Haley Karania. Welcome in on this Wednesday afternoon, hump day. Very excited to be here, and I'm very excited to see all of you in the chat. We did come to a conclusion yesterday. You are Haley's homies. I liked scrolling with the homies. I think that that's funny to play off of rolling with the homies. I like it. If you still want to call yourself one of my heroes, that is, we appreciate it so much. And if you'd rather listen, you can do that on your favorite podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you want to listen. We are there. So make sure that you're giving 5 stars, you're leaving reviews, you don't miss a show. You're subscribed so you never miss a show. And with that, we are going to get into tonight's show, which we have Nashville police. They've concluded their investigation of that Covenant shooting 2 years ago after the transgender killer took the lives of 6 innocent souls. So what role did the media and also our society play in this horrific tragedy? Then, while then President Joe Biden was in decline, mental decline, physical decline, many were wondering who is actually in charge in the Oval Office. And a new book confirms what many of us already knew: Obama. Then today is President Trump's Liberation Day. We're going to get into the tit for tat tariffs and what the president's goal really is. All that and so much more on Nightly Scroll. Now, the Covenant shooting took place in March of 2023. It was so tragic. I remember it just like yesterday. I was living in Nashville at the time. I had been to this neighborhood many times. It was the Green Hills neighborhood in Nashville. It's a very affluent area. It's a nice area, low crime. And of course, we see this horrific tragedy take place where a transgender shooter, who I will not name, I will never name, killed 3 third graders and 3 adults. Nashville PD, they have now concluded their investigation into this case, and they are now saying that there is no manifesto per se. Nashville PD and the Nashville community, other Nashville parents in the Covenant community, they don't want to use the phrase manifesto. But I don't understand that. They just seem very against using that phrase, but the shooter had various notebooks that detailed other inspirations. This shooter was inspired by the Columbine shooting in 1999. They were 28 years old. This was a biological female that had been going by male pronouns later in life. Her notebooks detailed like emotional and mental turmoil over her gender and her gender confusion, her being attracted to women and wanting to transition to a man. Again, this is severe mental illness, and it is a tragedy because when it goes unchecked like this is what happens. So this shooter had fantasies about mass shootings dating back to 2017 in these notebooks. Again, the authorities will tell you there was no manifesto, but left all of these notebooks that she had been writing in for years, talking about her inspiration to shoot up schools and kill other people. This was a severely disturbed person. And so in 2017, she fantasized about shooting up the Isaac T. Creswell Middle Magnet School for the Arts. Also, she fantasized about killing her own father and killing her psychiatrist. So this was someone who was receiving help. Now, the reason why this shooter did not end up going through shooting up that middle school was because this was a school that had a large Black community, and she was worried about being labeled a racist. This is shocking to me. I don't understand why you would be okay being labeled a school shooter, someone who has murdered children, but you don't want to be labeled a racist. Most normal people don't want to be labeled as either. But for whatever reason, in her messed up brain, she has justified shooting up this middle school, or this elementary school, rather, this Christian school. But she didn't want to shoot up the other middle school because it was predominantly Black. And the shooter said in these notebooks, in the police report, in their investigation, they said that she had no qualms about killing anyone, regardless of specific demographical categories. They've also said that a manifesto did not exist. I don't understand that. There are multiple documents. These were first published by Steven Crowder, by the way, because the Nashville community and the Nashville PD, Metro PD, they were really making sure that this story did not get out because it did not fit their narrative. This was a very sick individual, a transgender individual struggling with mental health. And, as all school shooters do, they're struggling mentally. So why they're saying that there was no manifesto because there was no specific reason as to why she targeted the Covenant School as opposed to any of the other ones. And they also claim that there's no specific reasons about what she hoped to gain, if anything, with the attack, which just goes against, because what I'm about to read you are details and reasons for why this shooter wanted to go through with this shooting. So the police say that there's no manifesto, there's no reason on the books as to why she went through with this attack. But according to police, this is what she wanted. She wanted the material to be publicly released and commented upon. She wanted books, documentaries, and movies to be made about the attack. She wanted the firearms that she used to be placed in a museum and wanted her bedroom to be left as is when the attack occurred as a memorial to her. This is a beyond delusional individual. She also wanted to mentor other shooters as to how they could succeed in their own shootings with proper planning. She also wanted to show off her superiority to others. Now, her parents had put her in therapy. They had said that she was dealing with some emotional disorder, which is quite obvious. But unfortunately, she was withholding information from this therapist so that she could carry out the attack. She didn't want to be stopped. So she was withholding information from the therapist about some of these desires, of course, because if she was honest with her therapist, she surely would be taken away or maybe arrested or stopped in some capacity. But she didn't want to, because I think she was hoping that in going to this therapist, her delusions wouldn't be treated, they would be affirmed. And this is exactly what we've seen. This is a transgender individual struggling with their gender identity. And here's what she said also in these notebooks, not the manifesto, but in her notebooks. Okay. She said, "I'd kill to have those resources." She's talking about gender affirming care. She said 2007 was the birth of puberty blockers and a newfound discovery for treatment of non-conforming transgender children. She went on to say, "I was in 6th grade. Puberty already hit me. I should not be in this body. Nothing on earth can save me. Never-ending pain. Religion won't save." So maybe she didn't come right out and say that she was going to target a Christian school, but she's obviously very frustrated with religion, saying that religion can't save. She also went into these notebooks saying that her mother just didn't understand what she was going through. Her mother was a Christian woman. She was anti-LGBTQ. She didn't want her to go through with these transgender surgeries. She didn't want to lose her daughter. She didn't want to call her daughter by this new transgender male name, this male identity. And the shooter admitted her mom thought that if she started calling her these things, she would have to grieve her daughter that she knew and loved, which is obviously a struggle that I think a lot of parents are dealing with. Their children are telling them that they're one way, And a lot of parents are saying, no, we have to reject this and go back to normalcy. So this wasn't an abnormal reaction from her parents. Her parents, were not supportive of this transgender journey. However, they were attempting to get her the help that she needed. Although personally, I think she was withholding information from the therapist, as we know from these documents. But I think she was doing that in order to maybe gain these access to transgender affirming care. And she didn't want to be helped. Her idea of help was going to hurt her more. So that's what her goal was. But, this entire story has kind of got me thinking. It's extremely tragic. But I will not say her name. I will not say her name, especially now that we know the motives behind this killer and this shooter. She wanted notoriety. She wanted her bedroom to essentially be a shrine that maybe people visited one day. She's completely sick, but she wanted the weapons that she used to be held in a museum. We do not need to give her the notoriety that she so craved. So, as much as I agree that we need to report on the news, we do not need to make her the star that she wanted to be. When something tragic happens, like in the case of a school shooting, these narcissists are driven by notoriety. We can report on what is happening without saying their name. I also think another issue with the media is that they jump on to report the race, the color, the gender identity, the queer status, or whatever it is, the documentation status, whatever identifier you want to use. The media jump on this and they try to use these identifying qualities to push whatever narrative it may be. I don't care what the school shooter is. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're Hispanic. I don't care if you're Black. I don't care if you're queer, trans. You're mentally ill. That is the common denominator. Doesn't matter what you are. Doesn't matter what your name is. You're a mentally ill freak. And I think the true crime obsession in this country has really emboldened these narcissistic killers to act on their sick and twisted desires. There are Netflix documentaries and mini series and all these things that are, inspired by true crime, these true stories. This has happened to real people. So I think the media needs to report the news, grieve with the families, pray for the victims and their families. But these situations should not be used to be moneymakers for production companies. They are not meant to be consumed in documentary form. These are innocent lives being taken. In this case, 3 children, 3 third graders. Their lives are gone. They're gone forever. They've been taken from us. And it's sick to think that companies like Netflix and all of these like true crime podcasts, they talk about these details, these intimate details of someone's, last moments. And it's really sad. It's really, really sad. And I know that people are going to say, well, you're part of the problem because you're commenting on this case. And, but I've seen so many people in the media saying her name today. They're saying her name and they're giving her the notoriety that she deserves. I think you report the news and you just, after hearing what drove the killer, it just opened my mind to how damaging this glamorization of true crime has become. But, it's not enough to just have the news report on the important details. I think sick people will be inspired by fiction as well. Like if true crime goes away, these people will not be stopped because you can't fix this with gun laws. It's already illegal to kill someone. You can't be tougher on crime than we already are, or even send these people to a maximum security prison. These people, these school shooters, they usually die doing this. This is a dying cause for them. So what this really comes down to is the mental illness crisis in this country. We have to fix it, not affirm it. We can't give these freaks a second of attention. We have to hope to God that it doesn't happen again. It's really, really sad. But I want to get into the next story that I have for you tonight, which is potentially a shadow president in former President Obama. You know, there's a new book out. It's by Jonathan Allen. He's a senior politics reporter at NBC News. He co-wrote the book with Amy Parnas. She's a senior political correspondent for The Hill. They wrote this book called Fight: Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. And I do think that this is funny because it's two liberals, probably they're, Monday morning quarterbacking, this craziness. Well, this was all happening underneath their noses. They were pushing the Biden administration. And now after seeing what happened, it's like, oh yeah, that was so crazy, right? How we pushed Biden out and, Kamala Harris took the helm. It was, they're just like, yeah, like that was crazy, bro. Meanwhile, the entire time they were gaslighting the American people. We were saying this man is not fit for office. And they said, no, he's fine. CNN's Jake Tapper wrote a book, talking about like the mental decline of President Biden. And meanwhile, while President Biden was in office, he just had nothing bad to say about President Biden or his mental acuity. I just find that quite ironic. But President Obama, according to these authors, President Obama did not think that Biden should continue on. He also did not want Kamala Harris to be the replacement for Biden. He didn't think that she was the best choice for Democrats. And apparently he worked really hard behind the scenes to kind of end her campaign. He wanted to have a mini primary or an open convention, but he didn't think that Kamala Harris could win the election, which is, obvious. As it turned out, she didn't win, but according to these authors, Obama was working really, really hard behind the scenes to have that not take place. So the Obamas were not thrilled that Kamala Harris got the endorsement, right? She was the next candidate for president. And that's who I guess the Democrats wanted to put up. I don't really know who made that decision, because if it wasn't the Obamas, then who? Was it this cabal at the DNC? Are they big enough to even take on the Obamas? But eventually the Obamas kind of fell in line. And according to someone on Kamala Harris's campaign, they were really, really strapped for cash. So we'll get into that for a second. But the Obamas, they fell in line and they endorsed Kamala Harris in this very cringe video. So we'll play that.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi. You're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
The Obamas call
I can't
Kamala.
have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Brock, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
We're going to have some fun with this, I guess. Yeah. So if that read as cringe to anyone else, you're not alone. Here's the behind the scenes of that cringe video. So the Daily Mail had an exclusive, the truth behind the cringe video of the Obamas endorsing Kamala Harris. So I teased earlier that the Harris campaign was really strapped for cash, and we know that they ended up in the negatives. They owed lots of money. They were in debt. But the Harris campaign essentially inherited this, this debt from Biden. The Biden campaign was hemorrhaging so much cash, and Harris kind of inherited that bad situation. And Jen O'Malley Dillon was a Obama alum who was running Harris's campaign, and she said that they were so strapped for cash, there were concerns that the campaign might not even make payroll in August leading up to the election. So O'Malley Dillon thought that a good way to generate some cash is by turning the Obamas' endorsement of Harris into a shareable video clip rather than just a tweet or a campaign event. The Obamas didn't even want to endorse her, and they even fought the Harris campaign on this. They were like, why can't we just put out a tweet? And, then the Harris campaign had to come out and say, well, we're really strapped for cash. So, this girl, O'Malley Dillon, she thinks that we can maybe make some more money if we put it on YouTube or if we put it on social media. Because you can't really, you can monetize a tweet, of course, or a post on X, but, you can't really monetize so much the Obamas coming out on stage somewhere on behalf of Kamala Harris. So they wanted to do this in a form of a shareable video. And now that you know the background of all of this, it was as fake as it seemed. The Obama's like, hey, girl, Michelle Obama, I just want to tell my girl, Kamala, and we're so proud of you. We're proud to endorse you. They were not, according to this book. But it really does beg the question, if the Obamas were still very much involved, why didn't the DNC listen to them? Maybe they didn't have as much power as we thought. So I feel like the question still stands. The questions were swirling about who is actually in charge at the White House. And I guess we really still don't know. I think a lot of people thought that it was Obama. If you have any other, some suggestions in the chat, let me know what you think. Who's in charge? But it seems like the DNC, is the DNC big enough to squash the Obamas and what they want for the Democrat Party? Were they involved in the White House? Were they really kind of the movers and shakers behind Biden? I don't know. I don't know who it was. Someone in the chat said Soros, George Soros, another one. The Clintons pulling the strings. It was blackmail. I don't know. It still begs the question, but maybe the Obamas weren't in charge in the White House so much as we thought, but they certainly were involved at Netflix. So Barack and Michelle Obama, they started this production company, and they were behind the Netflix hit in 2023, Leave the World Behind, which was inspired by a book. And apparently Barack Obama read this book and they loved it. And, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, they founded a production company called Higher Ground Productions in 2018. And their production company was hired to make this film. The film, by the way, Leave the World Behind, if you haven't seen it, it is curious that the Obamas were behind it, because it's about this post-apocalyptic world where chaos ensues. There's, I don't even know what happened. It seems like something horrible happened, a terror attack of some kind. There was a total grid shutdown in New York City, and the movie takes place on Long Island, just outside of New York City. This is where I'm from. And it's quite curious that there would be a former president behind a movie that has these such horrible, disastrous outcomes. A grid going down and political turmoil, these are things that maybe a former president shouldn't be involved in, even if it is fiction or based on a book. But the director of the film acknowledged that he saw all these conspiracy theories on the internet about the Obamas' involvement, but he quickly tried to debunk this by saying that the president's input, they asked for the president's input after the story was already done. They had already come up with the story, the script was done. And apparently President Obama came onto the project months after they had even started shooting the film. So he said the script was done, but then he kind of went on to say he obviously gave notes on the script. So the bones of the script were done, but he wasn't involved, but he was involved because Obama made changes to the script. And it's curious because there's all of this hatred towards Elon Musk now and Tesla. And maybe all of this kind of started in this film, Leave the World Behind. So I want to show you a screenshot from the movie. I can't play the clip because it's a Netflix clip. We don't want to have, copyright strikes on here. But in this scene in the movie, Julia Roberts is that woman standing in the middle there. And you see all of these cars piled up. They're all white cars. They're all brand new. Guess what? Teslas. Brand new Teslas. They're all self-driving Teslas. And they are part of all the chaos that is ensuing in this fictional world. And, Julia Roberts is standing there. She realizes, oh my gosh, we can't get off of Long Island. Like, we can't leave. All of these self-driving cars were basically going rogue and crashing into everyone else and creating this gridlock and this unsafe situation. People getting hurt, people not being able to leave. They were all able to blame this on Tesla, wreaking havoc. And of course, in the movie, it's not like they could have used any electric vehicle, right? Like, if the grid goes down and there's no gas and self-driving cars and whatever, they could have used Tesla's not the only electric vehicle on the market, folks. It's also not the only self-driving vehicle. So they had to, or they made a choice to blame Elon Musk and Tesla for all of this. So I just found that curious. And with all of this going on, Elon Musk, he posted on Twitter, this is again back in 2023, but he said, Teslas can charge from solar panels even if the world goes fully Mad Max and there is no more gasoline. So he responded to one of Netflix's tweets where they showed this scene from the movie with all of the Teslas piling up. And that movie came out in late 2023. I just can't help but note how the media can't help but sow division in this country. They took it upon themselves to make Elon Musk's Tesla a villain in this post-apocalyptic film. And they could have used anyone, but they chose Tesla. And they really kind of spoke this Tesla hatred into existence. It's sort of like they manifested it because now we keep seeing all of these attacks on Tesla. They just keep coming. And now here's a video. I sound like a broken record because all of these Tesla attacks, they just keep coming. I don't know why these people, they haven't seen other people get arrested for this. They don't know that Teslas have cameras. But here's a guy, his name is Chad Rittenbaugh. He's from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He was caught keying a swastika into this man's car. So we can watch this video here. Here he is sneaking around. He's now, it looks like, drawing something on the car, and he walks away. Now, this Tesla owner confronted him.
Free service? How about you pay for the repairs? Write a check. You just bought a Tesla.
I can wipe it off with
No,
a towel.
no,
It's not
no.
a key.
It is a
It was
hate
a-
crime,
it was a
sir.
crayon.
It is a hate crime.
Listen,
Did you write a swastika on there?
I'm sorry you're upset.
Did you write a
It didn't
swastika?
it didn't even work. Apparently
Did
it doesn't
you
work.
write a
The crayons
swastika
don't
on
work.
It's a key, sir. We see it on the video.
It's not a key.
Is it a
I was probably
swastika?
putting my keys in
Is
my
it a
pocket.
swastika?
Have you looked at your car?
Is it a
Is
swastika?
there a key mark?
Yes. Is it
It's
a
not-
swastika?
that's
It's at the
impossible.
police right now. It's being fingerprinted
What do you mean it's being fingerprinted?
because they're trying to track you down.
Oops.
Thankfully, Facebook tracked you down.
Uh-huh.
So your business, your freaking livelihood, everything now,
Listen.
because you chose to write so to tell Facebook that you're sorry for writing a swastika on a Tesla.
Listen, I said I'm sorry.
For what?
And I
For what?
apologize.
For what?
I have nothing against
For
your
what?
car, and I have nothing against you.
So why
Okay.
would you write a swastika on a Tesla?
Obviously, I have something against Elon Musk, but that's not the
So
way
Elon
to
Musk
show my.
owns that car because
No,
it was
he
bought
owns
and
the
paid
company.
for. It was bought and paid for a long time
That's
ago.
why it's misguided, and obviously I did not intend to do.
There were a lot of things about this video that kind of made me chuckle. When first he said, well, it's a crayon, I can wash it off. When the Tesla owner was saying, there, you can't wipe it, it's keyed. And I've already called the police. Like, the police are on this. They have found you. And he's, confronting him about drawing a swastika on his car. And the guy's like, well, it's a crayon, I can wash it off. Like, doesn't matter really what you did it with. I mean, obviously a key is worse, but you still drew a swastika on the car. Like, admit it. And then I did find it funny because the guy was like, tell Facebook you're sorry. Forget telling Facebook sorry. Book this guy, arrest him. And he was arrested. But I just thought it was funny. Like, tell Facebook sorry. Like, he should be apologizing to you. He vandalized your car. So Rittenbaugh was booked on criminal mischief, harassment, and disorderly conduct charges. I also think it's funny. He tried to say, well, I can repay you. I can give you like free services. And the guy's like, what? Like, pay for the damage of my freaking car, bro. It's just wild. So it seems like there's only one political party spray painting and keying or crayoning swastikas and Nazi messaging on cars and posters, and it's not the Republicans. It can get a little confusing, though. So I follow Nick Shirley on TikTok, and he did some man on the street interviews, and he confronted some of these Elon Musk protesters to find out exactly what makes them so angry. Watch this.
What makes you guys want to come out here today in support of the fascism that's happening here in the United States?
Support the fascism?
Well, do you believe? Well, you say Elon Musk is a Nazi.
Did you see him do that?
Yeah, like you're doing right now, right?
That's a Nazi.
So
I'm not a Nazi.
Are you?
Only Nazis want Musk.
So you're not protesting because you want Elon Musk to be a Nazi?
Is this obvious? Isn't this obvious?
Well, only Nazis want Musk. So I'm kind of confused.
We're not Nazis.
Oh, you guys aren't Nazis.
No.
Oh. And what makes Elon such a bad guy?
How about this as one thing? Who does that?
Mm-hmm.
Who does
You.
it? Hitler. I don't want Hitler.
Oh, okay.
And he's wiping out the government. The Department of Education has done so much good. And the NIH, she has huge grant, $35 million grant with the NIH. They are wiping out the NIH. And they have 23-year-old people deciding what goes.
Yeah, big balls is...
Yeah.
It's kind of like, why big balls?
Again, so good. It's so good because they're acting like Nazis. They're the ones with all this Nazi paraphernalia. And the guy could not stop doing the Nazi salute throughout the video. He's like, who does this? And Nick was like the salute that you're doing right now. So it's pretty funny that he went up to them asking them if they were the Nazis, and then they go and do the Nazi salute. It's poetic justice. It's just very ironic. And I also thought it was important to note that they're wearing masks outside, those like big burly N95s. These people are clearly not up with the times. They're not really mentally stable. He also was spewing some misinformation, if I'd like to point out. He said that Elon Musk was getting rid of the Department of Education. That was actually President Trump via executive order. That was Trump. That was not part of the government efficiency program that is being headed up by Elon Musk right now. So, yeah, I mean, there is probably a lot of waste in the DOE, but that was all Trump's doing, not Elon Musk. So they're out there protesting for some of the wrong reasons, which I thought was quite hilarious, if I do say so myself. Quick election updates from yesterday. We've got some good news. We've got some bad news. I'm going to start with the good news. Florida State Senator Randy Fine in District 6. He is going to be taking over Mike Waltz's former congressional seat. So he is now not just he is a former state senator. He is now a congressman-elect. He won that seat by 14 points, which is great to see. Jimmy Patronis in District 1, also the Republican candidate there. He is going to take over Matt Gaetz's former seat. So another congressman-elect. He had posted on X like a really sweet photo of him and his family already on their way to D.C. He posted in the airport. So he's ready to go, which we love to see. And even earlier in the day, Petronas gave an interview to Breitbart News, and he said that Republicans should never become complacent after a victory like November's, and the party should be scared in every single election. I totally agree. Republicans, we rest on our laurels at times. Everyone thought that the 2022 midterm elections were going to be this red wave. It was not a red wave. And I think in this past election, we saw, wow, this was a landslide election. Trump won all the swing states and the popular vote, and it was an incredible showing for Republicans. But we lost this Supreme Court seat in Wisconsin. The Democrat candidate there, Susan Crawford, she won last night. Brad Schimmel conceded the election, called and conceded the election. So that liberal court is going to stay liberal. However, the state did vote in favor of voter ID laws. There's a decades-old requirement already on the books in Wisconsin that says that voters have to show voter ID. And now voters just last night, voted that this is going to be permanently part of the state constitution. So that's great. There's a step in the right direction. However, we didn't get our way with the Supreme Court battle. There are a lot of people who are now kind of blaming Elon Musk for this, because Elon Musk, he stepped out in Wisconsin on Sunday ahead of the election yesterday. And, like we reported on this show, he was giving away $1 million to two separate voters to incentivize voting in person. Now, critics are saying that this didn't work. He's got to step away. He's not working for the Republican Party. So here's a headline about Elon Musk potentially stepping away from Doge. It says Elon Musk under pressure to wrap up Doge after the GOP Wisconsin blowout. He has now taken to X and totally debunked this, as has White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Caroline Leavitt said this is fake news. This is not a scoop. It is well known and well reported by Elon Musk and Trump, both on the record saying that Elon Musk was going to step away from Doge eventually, but not anytime soon. Trump is excited about what he's doing with Doge. But it's sad to see that it didn't work out in the way that Elon Musk hoped and that all of Republicans hoped. But this loss wasn't because, I think Republicans, it wasn't about Elon Musk. It was about, not getting to the polls maybe when Trump's name isn't on the ballot. Maybe people just didn't know about it. Maybe they didn't understand how high the stakes were, that this race was going to switch the balance of power on the court from liberal to conservative to maybe even this out. But to blame this on Elon, he can't be the scapegoat of the left and the right. We can't blame all of our problems on Elon Musk. That's insane. But today is also Liberation Day. Okay, this is Trump's self-proclaimed Liberation Day. It is the day America has decided to put herself first in the trade war, no longer taking it from other countries, but finally fighting back. So to fill you in, Trump has already imposed tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, and he just announced more today. So I'll get into the ones that he announced today in just a little bit, but President Trump imposed 25% tariffs on auto imports. So foreign brands like Toyota, Honda, it's going to impact them big time, but also American car manufacturers, Ford and General Motors, they also rely on imported parts. Many of their cars are assembled in Canada and Mexico. So this is going to hurt American companies too, because they're doing their business abroad rather than right here. This is all part of Trump's America First agenda. Yep, here's Donald J. Trump on X. It's Liberation Day in America. That was him earlier this morning. And Senate Republicans they're kind of bracing for this passage of a bipartisan bill to undo this 25% tariff that he's putting on Canada. Here's what Trump said on Truth Social. This was yesterday. He was very concerned with Mitch McConnell, senator from Kentucky, also Lisa Murkowski from Alaska, Susan Collins, a senator from Maine. They are rhinos. They will always lean more moderate, and a lot of votes come down to, Murkowski and Collins. This isn't something new. But here's what he said on X, or no, sorry, this was Truth Social. I apologize. He said Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, and Rand Paul, also of Kentucky, will hopefully get on board the Republican bandwagon for a change, fight the Democrats' wild and flagrant push to not penalize Canada for the sale into our country of large amounts of fentanyl. Also, blaming them for their part in the migrant crisis. He said they're playing with the lives of American people and right into the hands of the radical left and the drug cartels. So I want to remind everyone that, yes, there are a lot of criticisms. There are a lot of economic concerns. And Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, I do think that he is a very common sense figure in Congress. I appreciate Rand Paul. I respect Rand Paul. He's usually on the right side of history, especially when it comes to COVID-19, the TikTok ban, First Amendment issues. But this one, he cites economic concerns. He was doing a local radio interview. So he said, I live in a state where we have 3 of the big automobile manufacturers are all opposed to tariffs, and I think that would hurt them. He also said the bourbon industry in Kentucky, they don't like tariffs. He went on to say he's got farmers. They don't like tariffs. He said, I really don't have any organized business interests in my state that think they're a good idea. This is just something that I disagree with President Trump on. I can understand that. Here is President Trump today, though, rallying the troops around some of these new tariffs that he's placed. Watch this.
From this day on, we're not going to let anyone tell us that American workers and families cannot have the future that they deserve. We're going to produce the cars and ships, chips, airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America. The pharmaceutical companies are going to become roaring back. They're coming roaring back. They're all coming back to our country because if they don't, they got a big tax to pay. And if they do, I'll be very happy, and you're going to be very happy, and you're going to be very safe. We're going to build our future with American hands, with American heart, American steel, and we're going to build it with American pride like we used to.
Now, it was a great speech. Here are some of the tariffs that Trump is imposing. Sean Spicer posted this on X. Here's a list of some of the tariffs. These are the reciprocal tariffs that the United States are going to impose on countries that are already taxing the you-know-what out of us. So a lot of these are discounted reciprocal taxes and tariffs that we're not even charging these people or taxing these people as much as they are taxing us. They're almost, 50% less. Economic concerns are valid, and conservatives really historically don't like taxes, but the purpose of these taxes is not just about business. It's a leveraging tool that Trump is using to get Canada and Mexico to do their part in alleviating the border crisis. Migrants and fentanyl are flooding across the border, and they need to do their part. So while there may be some short-term pain, Canada has already said, they'll drop their tariffs if we drop ours. This is a negotiating tactic that Trump has used before. The economy was fine, it rebounded, and I am choosing to trust the process for the long-term safety and security of our nation. Now, we're going to get into, do I have another? Oh, I do. I have another headline. We've got some good news out of the FBI. So we're going to get scrolling in just a second here, but good news out of the FBI. Kash Patel, he announced today that the FBI has seen 5,577 new agent applications just this month, or last month, I should say, in March, and 10,000 since January. So the FBI is being flooded with a record number of new agent applications. The last time the FBI saw a monthly figure even close to this was back in 2016, and it's less. It was less. It was 5,283 applications. So now we're up by hundreds of applications here. This is really indicative of a positive shift in the law enforcement agencies in this country. If you remember during the Biden administration, the morale was so low. Of course, during the defund the police movement, police officers and law enforcement officers their offices were being defunded. There were, reports of suicide rates rising amongst police officers, extremely sad. Police officers and their stations, they had really, really difficult time recruiting. Morale amongst Border Patrol was really low. These people weren't able to do their jobs. So I think it speaks a lot to the Trump administration and who they've trusted to lead these agencies. We have Kristi Noem at DHS. We have Tom Homan, the border czar. We have, of course, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Director Dan Bongino. And this kind of reminds me, that saying, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. There we go. We've got the sound of freedom there. Yeah, we saw a lot of weak times and weak leadership under President Biden. Strong men were forced to not do their jobs. They weren't allowed to do their jobs. And now we're seeing stronger men in charge, taking charge and allowing the men under them to do their jobs and to make America safe again. So we're now seeing strong men back in charge, creating good times and by proxy, safe times. So I just thought that was a great way to end the news portion of this show. We are going to get into scrolling time. We love it. All right, the first video that I have for you today, we talked about in the beginning of the show, like where Joe Biden was, was he even in charge? Who was in charge if it wasn't Joe Biden? A lot of people, they were asking, where's Hunter Biden? People want to know the whereabouts of the Biden family. And I feel like no one's really heard from Joe Biden. Not that we care because he's not in charge anymore. He was voted out and he was ousted by the DNC. But a TikTok user found Joe Biden on Amtrak. Joey Amtrak, he loves the train. Watch this. It says, thank God I didn't want to miss the train. And then she ended up sitting literally behind Joe Biden. So she posted a video and pictures of Joe Biden's bald head. And then they took a photo together. But the comment section was hilarious. Lots of liberals. I was shocked. Lots of liberals missing Joe Biden. Ms. Mazier commented, please tell him the babysitter is weird and he needs to come back home ASAP. The babysitter being Donald Trump, who's not the babysitter. He is your president. You might say not your president. He's your president. I am Whitney M said, did he say he was coming to pick us up? Olivia said, Joe Biden, if you can hear me, please save us. Someone else said he looks so refreshed. Someone else said Joe Biden was not perfect, but I never lost any sleep wondering what tragedy would happen on his watch. He is a good man. There were tragedies that happened on Joe Biden's watch. I can think of one off the top of my head, the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, where 13 service members were killed thanks to Joe Biden. So I don't know why that person wasn't losing sleep. Maybe they just weren't paying attention. Someone else, Lily, said, as someone who has seen firsthand early stage dementia, I didn't want him leading this country. It isn't a stutter. It was dementia, and it has only gotten worse. I'm glad he's out. So just a little bit of sanity. Thank goodness. But the sanity ends there because this person on social media, he is complaining about, fascist conservatives, all while cheering on their demise. He wants conservatives to just go away forever. So listen to this.
I think conservative ideology after this can never be a thing anymore. Having a group of people who all believe in the exact opposite of progress, like it just doesn't work in terms of progressing as a society. Like it just doesn't. You can't have one group of people that are working actively against progress and expect them not to eventually stoop to these levels. I don't think it's a coincidence that it always ends up here. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that they consistently start to lose in history, and then they fucking throw out the playbook and just start doing some really evil, heinous shit for 50 years to get people really, really, like, it's
For
fucking
50 years?
It's disgusting. It's evil. These are
Who
evil
was just
people.
in charge?
They're evil. They just are.
We
Not
can end the video
necessarily
there.
the people that
He goes on for like 2 minutes, but on the video, the text says, "Why should conservatives be allowed to exist?" When you say that conservatives are evil and you use this language, this rhetoric that this entire group of people shouldn't exist, and then you talk about calling Trump Hitler and he's a fascist and all this stuff, it's like, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. You are calling on an entire group of people to cease to exist. And then they think that they're the good guys? I don't think so. I've got 2 more videos for you. One is a video of a liberal protester getting dressed for the day, and this is quite the outfit. I'm going to try to pull up some of the comments here. We could play it. She's got blue hair. If you're listening to the show, she's got blue hair. She's got like an Afghan wrap of some sort on a pink sweater. And can we play that again? What else was she wearing? She looks insane. She looks like a liberal. This is what liberals look like. If you're listening and you're not watching, just picture a liberal. She got a pink granny sweater on, this crazy like paisley patterned blue and yellow skirt. I don't know, man. She doesn't look good. But here were some of the comments. She did it, guys. She saved the world. Your grandma wants her clothes back. Another unemployed freak. This is why I love sometimes the comment section. You just get like a taste of reality. Someone just said, embarrassing. If you have time to do your little protests all the time, then you serve no benefit to society, just wasting time, doing nothing, all because your protests, you're just throwing. She hates America, kids, police, Teslas, and probably her parents. And then someone said, I'm so confused, can't even figure out what you stand for. So you can't even tell what's parody anymore. But I've got one more video for you tonight, and it is very cute. There's a little girl. She's getting ready for church, but she might be too ready. Watch this.
We about to meet the Lord.
We're going to praise him. We're not ready to meet him yet. Say, praise him.
Praise him.
Amen.
Amen. She said, I'm getting ready to meet the Lord. Not yet, sweetheart. You just got here. You're not going anywhere. So I just thought that was really funny. Getting ready for church. I'm getting ready to meet the Lord. Not quite. Not so fast. We're going to praise him. We're not going to meet him just yet, hopefully. That is all I have for you tonight. I was on my good friend Chrissy Clark's podcast, the Underreported Stories podcast, yesterday. I posted the link on my story. So if this wasn't enough Haley content for you, you can go watch that. I will also be joining Turning Point tonight with Joe Bob. That is going to be tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern time. So I will make sure to post the link on my social so you can catch that too. And I will see you right back here tomorrow. Thanks for being here. I like the music. Good morning and welcome to Bongino Report. Early edition, Trump announces fair trade tariffs on a new American Liberation Day. The persecution of Syrian Christians escalates. Alec Baldwin says that we are in a pre-Civil War era. Representative Jasmine Crockett admits that she is indeed a DEI hire. A Brown University student sparks a school-wide meltdown for exposing the collegiate bureaucracy. The Texas GOP honors Pakistan, a country that jails Christians and forces conversions. Elites are embracing designer babies and eugenics, and harem erotica is overtaking the men's adventure fiction genre. All this on Bongino Report, early edition.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
Yesterday, President Trump said that it is Liberation Day, and he stood in the Rose Garden and announced a 10% baseline tariff on all imports and a 25% tariff on foreign automobiles. And these tariffs are part of Trump's kind reciprocal approach, as he called it in the speech, kind reciprocal, meaning it's levies that are still lower than what other countries impose on us already. So contrary to what many are insisting, this isn't protectionism in the pejorative sense. It is a demand for fairness, and it's already working. Israel has canceled all tariffs on American products this week, just a day after Canadian trade representatives indicated no retaliatory tariffs would be issued on America. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum similarly said no tit-for-tat retaliatory tariffs would be imposed, and Ontario Premier Doug Ford offered to negotiate dropping trade barriers on both sides. So much for all the Trump will spark a trade war hysteria. And let's talk about the fear-mongering. I want to address it head on this morning because it's not just coming from the left. Yes, the left, they hate Trump, and that's old news. They will oppose anything that he does. But I think that the louder panic over Liberation Day is coming from the so-called free market Republicans and online economists, these online experts who still believe in that unilateral trade concessions are the golden path for prosperity in this country. And they insist that Trump's tariffs will destroy our economy. Like, we are headed down a very dark, dark path, according to the online economy experts and, of course, all the sort of old school GOP members. But what they're defending is a system of arbitrary, massive trade imbalances that have already gutted American industry. They defend a policy regime that treats Americans as consumers only, not as workers, as builders, or just as citizens. We've been talking about this a lot lately. Like, what does America first really mean? And this gets at the heart of how Trump defines America first. This is why Trump stood not just with his cabinet yesterday in the Rose Garden, but with United Auto Workers union members. Because this is a policy that doesn't just boost GDP, it raises wages, brings back jobs, and restores sovereignty. Here was journalist Batya Ungar-Sargon, and I think that she does just an excellent job of framing this as something very positive for working class Americans. And take note that if you don't even know who Batya is, she is a former liberal. She is not a GOP card-carrying Republican in any sense of the word. She is somebody who has seen what Trump has done, prioritizing the working class, and it has really resonated with her. Take a listen to how she frames this.
What I find so frustrating about the conversation around tariffs is that we all agree on the problem. We all agree that the deindustrialization of America led to the downward mobility of the American working class, deaths of despair, people working multiple jobs and not being able to afford the American dream. We all agree that it is deeply unfair for the American middle class to be bearing the burden of unfair tariffs from other countries. We all agree that it is great for the president to have leverage in order to demand reasonable things, like that countries stop allowing fentanyl to murder 100,000 Americans every year, and that Mexico do its part to police its own border. And yet when somebody has the courage to show up and say to Wall Street, screw you, I am waging war, I'm waging class warfare on behalf of the American working class, and you elites in Wall Street, you do what you need to do because I'm not going to stop fighting for the American working class. Suddenly, everybody is sitting around going, oh no, the stock market. Yeah, the stock market looks like that because the rich are punishing Trump for siding with the neglected and humiliated American working class over them. We have already seen these tariffs work, Pierce. The number of people crossing the southern border is at zero. Fentanyl is at record lows for the last 10 years. We have already seen $1.2 trillion in manufacturing invested in this country since January 21st. So they have already worked.
Batya, if you're listening, that was amazing. That was the greatest thing I've ever seen on Piers Morgan. And Michael was in my ear just now, and he said, that's the quietest I've ever seen a Piers Morgan panel. And you know, that show is notorious for people just going at each other like wild animals. Like, it's just a free-for-all. And Piers Morgan loves it. Like, he loves the drama of it. But everybody was silent because this woman was just so passionate and so articulate as she laid it out perfectly. This is not a trade war. It's a strategic recalibration. For decades, both political parties in this country insisted we had to accept foreign protectionism while giving away access to the American market for free. And that's how we ended up offshoring millions of manufacturing jobs, gutting entire towns, and becoming dependent on adversaries like China. It's a national security threat, frankly. And Trump is doing what past leaders have refused to do, and that is making foreign access to the US market contingent on fairness. Not walls, but balance. Not isolation, but accountability. This policy is radical only because our political class has been so derelict for so long. The belief that free trade is always good, even if it's one-sided and destructive, is not economics. That's dogma. And we tried it their way, and it has failed. Millennials, the first generation to be worse off than their parents. Why do you think that is? Trump's not trying to freeze the world. He's trying to rebalance it so that American workers aren't competing on a tilted field against slave labor, currency manipulation, and foreign subsidies. Here was Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick yesterday.
So what's happened to the world is the global governments have backed taking our factories away from us. I mean, there's nothing about Taiwan that they should be making semiconductors. There's nothing about Korea. They should be making all of the appliances and the electronics of the world. What's happened is they had a policy of their governments to let's back our companies and let's take this business from America while America's not paying attention. So our factories went overseas. But what you're going to see is the most modern factories of the world come back here. We are going to start on one of the great training programs of the world to teach our employees what tradecraft is, you know, how to build factories, and not the old kind of factories. I'm talking the most modern, the most high-tech factories. When you say HVAC, what we're talking about is cooling a high-tech semiconductor plant, probably one of the coolest jobs you can have. Right? Mechanics, fixing robotics. That's what's coming to America. The coolest factories, the highest tech factories, they're all coming home, and Donald Trump is bringing them home, and he's going to create a renaissance of high-tech manufacturing in America. That's why America's going to win.
Renaissance of high-tech manufacturing. When has a president talked like that in recent memory? Like, politicians are just so out of sync with what Americans actually want from our leaders in this country. And somebody brought this up on X yesterday, and I was born in 1999. This happened in 1999. In 1999, left-wing activists protested the World Trade Organization in Seattle. And they were opposing globalization and free trade agreements that they believed rightfully harmed workers and, of course, the liberals, so also the environment. We could throw up some of those videos, Michael, of what that looked like. You don't have the video of people protesting? Maybe not. Just so you can see kind of what it looked like in Seattle. I mean, people were furious. And again, I was born in 99, so I didn't know about this until I heard about it yesterday. And there was so much just passion and outrage. And look at they're using just full on police gear, riot gear, handling these people. And at the time, support for free trade was bipartisan, establishment consensus. And the only people opposing it were anti-globalization leftists, the pre-Bernie bros. Now, 2 decades later, this is what's so ironic about it, 2 decades later, it is Republican President Donald Trump who effectively ended that era of American worker last trade policy by challenging global trade norms and promoting economic nationalism. Like, who would have thought during these protests in 1999 that it would be the Republican Party and Donald Trump who would be standing up for American workers? Like, can you imagine if you went back in time and told them what would happen in the future? They would be beside themselves. They wouldn't believe you. And this is the Trump doctrine. Economic nationalism rooted in common sense. And it's been a consistent position of President Trump for years. Here was President Trump back in the 80s.
And yet we let Japan come in and dump everything right into our markets and everything. It's not free trade. If you ever go to Japan right now and try to sell something, forget about it, Oprah. Just forget about it. It's almost impossible. They don't have laws against it. They just make it impossible. They come over here, they sell their cars, their VCRs, they knock the hell out of our companies. And hey, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese people. I mean, you can respect somebody that's beating the hell out of you, but they are beating the hell out of this country. Kuwait, they live like kings. The poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings. And yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
Trump asks the forgotten question: how do people earn money to buy those cheap imports if the industries that once employed them are gone? A nation that produces nothing of value cannot consume its way to greatness. So how do we measure success? Not just by stock market charts and abstract GDP growth, but by whether ordinary Americans are thriving, working, building, and owning their future again. And by the way, the goal is to see GDP growth. And Trump says that we will have growth as industry returns to this country. But at the heart of this policy really is individuals, people over multinational corporations, global capital, cheap labor, open markets, endless growth, even if it means destroying entire American industries, is not winning. We don't measure success simply by stock indexes or trade volumes. We measure it by how actual people are doing in this country. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to talk about President Trump dismantling another dogmatic view of the political left and right that has not been challenged, frankly, in decades. Don't go anywhere. All right, guys, you know I don't drink just any coffee. I drink Blackout coffee because it's 100% American-made, unapologetically patriotic, and absolutely delicious. We all know the big corporate coffee chains are more interested in pushing leftist agendas than actually making good coffee. Blackout coffee, they're different. They stand for faith, for family, for freedom, and they actually support the values that we all believe in. Plus, their coffee is roasted fresh, small batch, and packed with bold, smooth flavors. Whether you love a strong dark roast, a smooth medium, or something flavored, they've got something for you. And guys, understand, I was not a major coffee drinker before working for Dan Bongino, and the entire crew here at Silverlock got me hooked on coffee. Thank you, Michael. And my personal favorite is the cold brew. And you guys can find your own favorite, though, if you want. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Evita, because if you are listening right now, you get 20% off your first order when you use my code Evita. That's EVITA at checkout. Support an America First coffee company that actually shares your values. Visit blackoutcoffee.com/Evita and use code Evita for 20% off your first order. You guys know that this dogmatic view of free trade is not simply tied to economic policy, but foreign policy in general. Here was George W. Bush.
What's interesting about our country, if you study history, is that there are some isms that occasionally pop up. One is isolationism, and its evil twin protectionism, and its evil triplet nativism.
Isolationism, protectionism, nativism. All together. The dogmatic commitment to free trade is not merely economic, it is a pillar of a broader foreign policy ideology rooted in globalism. And leaders like George W. Bush treated free trade as a moral obligation tied to America's role as the steward of a liberal international order. And that's why Bush constantly criticized protectionism and isolationism in the same breath. To him, tariffs weren't just bad economics, they were a rejection of America's global mission. And this ideology assumed that dismantling economic borders would naturally lead to peace, prosperity, and the spread of liberal democracy abroad. But in practice, what happened? It conflated the health and multinational markets with national strength, and it ignored the toll this approach took on American workers and industries. And we're not better off today. So in other words, this worldview was catastrophic. Under Bush, China was granted permanent normal trade relations status and later joined the World Trade Organization, moves that devastated U.S. manufacturing while enriching the CCP. We were told, oh, this would destroy the CCP, right? Oh, they would stop being communist now. No, there's still a horrible regime, and they still use slave labor that we can't compete with. At home, whole swaths of the country were hollowed out as factories closed, jobs were offshored, and once thriving towns were left to decay. And just as free trade was supposed to spread democracy and prosperity, so too were the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, framed as moral crusades for the liberal order. Both failed. Iraq and Afghanistan ended in chaos and retreat, just as free trade hollowed out American industry. So together they show that exporting values abroad while neglecting national interests at home is a losing strategy. Bush's legacy reveals that the marriage of free trade fundamentalism with interventionist foreign policy didn't make America stronger. It made us weaker, more dependent, less sovereign. And Iraq and Afghanistan are not the only examples. This week, LifeSite News sat down with the head of the German wing of Christian Solidarity International. He's a priest. And he recounted a harrowing report on Christian persecution in Syria. Today, with Assad overthrown and a former al-Qaeda warlord in power, Christians in Syria have faced escalating religious persecution and coercion under the new Islamist regime. Christian children are forced to wear hijabs, recite Quranic verses in school, and face expulsion if they refuse. At military checkpoints, Christians are not allowed to pass unless they recite the Islamic creed, so essentially coerced into false conversion under threat of violence or beatings. Entire communities live in fear, watching Alawite and Christian neighbors slaughtered in mass killings while knowing they could be next. Syria was once home to over 2 million Christians. It's now only a few 100,000 left, and most of them see no future in their homeland. And this is an ancient Christian community. Same thing happened, by the way, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Ancient Christian communities destroyed because the power vacuum allowed for Islamic extremists to then take over these regions. This is the brutal reality of regime change driven by Western globalist policy. And once again, Christians, other religious minorities, they are paying the price. It has not helped anyone, as well as us, right? We bankrupted ourselves with all these foreign wars. The U.S. has routinely armed Islamist rebel groups in the name of freedom, destabilized secular governments like Assad's, and cheered as Western-backed uprisings swept through the Middle East. But rather than ushering in democracy, these interventionists unleashed jihadist terror, like what I just described in Syria. This isn't a detour from globalist agenda. It is the end game of it. This is what it looks like. This, what we're showing you right now on screen. The same people who told us that trade in China would liberalize the CCP also insisted that overthrowing Middle Eastern regimes would spread human rights. Has it spread human rights? Do you see the video I'm showing you? No, it has not spread human rights.
And instead, we got slave labor supply chains, fentanyl flooding the US, Islamist governments massacring Alawites, threatening Christians with extinction. Trump's economic nationalism, tariffs, border control, anti-interventionism isn't just a correction of bad policy. It is a moral and strategic reckoning with the catastrophic consequences of globalist delusion. You know, there's this narrative that the political right and the political left are wildly at odds with one another. That's at least what Alec Baldwin said yesterday. I want to address this narrative head on. But first, listen to what Alec Baldwin has to say.
And boy, you can see now that we are in a pre-Civil War culture now.
Mm.
They describe things back then politically. There were profound differences, of course, in terms of just history and age and, you know, what life was like back then, and cotton and slavery and Lincoln and Robert E. Lee and so forth. There's just so many. Watching this show really reminded me of how we are in a very similar state now, in a pre-Civil War culture, in a pre-Civil War environment.
Okay, Michael brought up a good point. This guy should probably be in jail. He shot someone. He killed a woman. Also, he's advocating for like all of these gun restrictions, and Alec Baldwin didn't follow any of the basic gun safety rules and then killed a woman. And it's like, I'm sorry, like, you can't obviously handle a gun, but other people who can should not be prevented from having it because idiots like you don't know how to use a weapon. But aside from that, I don't buy this narrative that we are in a pre-Civil War era, that we need to have a separation between the left and the right, the Republicans and the Democrats. And I say that because so many Democrats that I talk to are actually pretty reasonable. And I've met the crazy ones. I know what, like, the people that are burning Teslas to the ground right now, people who were involved in race Marxism, burning down American cities in 2020 and toppling statues of the founding father, like, those guys exist. Those guys are unhumans and they're crazy and you can't have a conversation with them. But there are a lot of people who vote for the Democratic Party who I am able to have a conversation with. And I bring this up a lot, you guys, because my family is a purple family. Some of my aunts and uncles vote Republican, other ones vote Democrat. And even my Bernie bro grandparents, they're pretty reasonable. Like, we don't see eye to eye, but we have the same goals. We want America to be a strong, thriving country. And on things like the war in Iraq and Afghanistan being a disaster, we both agree on that. Like, it was funny. My grandmother, she's now gone. She died last summer, but she was a fascinating lady. And I remember back before Obama was elected, she would stand on street corners protesting the war in Iraq, and like our little hometown, nobody was paying attention. He'd be there with like 3 other liberals, and at the time, I think my dad was like, "This is just crazy. Like, obviously, we need to be in Iraq and Afghanistan," and as all Republicans kind of felt at that time. And it turns out she was right. And I think there's a lot of times where we're seeing a sort of a reckoning among Republicans and Democrats where there are things actually that we agree on that we, for some reason, were pitted against each other with. And Trump has been really the ideological bridge here. The real divide isn't so much Democrat versus Republican anymore. I think it's populism versus globalism. And things are in flux and it can feel chaotic, yes. And I think that plays into the hysteria from somebody like Alec Baldwin, who, by the way, is probably one of these crazy individuals who I said you can't really have a conversation with. But most working class Americans, regardless of party, are starting to agree on more than the media wants to admit. Some may find Trump distasteful, that's true. And many didn't vote for him for that reason because they don't like the way he is personality-wise. But most of us want secure borders, affordable groceries, honest schools, a government that puts its own people first. And that unity scares the ruling class, which is why they keep feeding us the script that there's irreconcilable division in the country. But when you listen to people and not pundits, you hear something different. Oftentimes you hear common sense. I do. Most Democrats are not unhumans. And like I said, that unity scares the ruling class, which is why they keep feeding us this script about a reconcilable division. Because if working class Americans realize how much they actually agree on faith, on family, sovereignty, fairness, it threatens the whole game. The elites rely on chaos and confusion to keep power centralized and unaccountable. Populist unity means they can't divide and conquer anymore. It means their grip on the narrative, the economy, and even our cultural institutions starts to slip, and it's slipping. By the way, guys, The Hill decided to write a story about me yesterday, which was kind of fun to see. So after the show, I tweeted this. I said, my baby sister was born with 2 holes in her heart and needed a very risky surgery. My father, at Sec Duffy, knew he needed to be home with his newborn daughter, my mother, and my 8 siblings. So my dad resigned. What he did not do was demand an unconstitutional exception that would allow him to vote remotely. He viewed his job in Congress as a responsibility and a privilege, not an entitlement. If you are unable to fulfill the duties required of a member of Congress because you are a parent of a small child, feel free to resign. Many have before. And this is, of course, in reaction to a bunch of Republicans, including especially Anna Paulina Luna, derailing the voting yesterday and for the entire week, actually, because they want to have parents of small children be allowed to vote remotely in Congress. And I am very much against this. I think I explained pretty in a lot of detail yesterday why I'm against it. But I tweeted this out after the show. And so The Hill decided to do a little write-up on it. And the headline reads, Sean Duffy's daughter lays into Luna proxy voting push. Feel free to resign. And that's like a quote from me. And I just want to say that the headline is a little bit misleading here because I didn't even mention Anna Paulina Luna in that tweet. And I'm going to reiterate something that I said in the show yesterday. I disagree with Anna Paulina Luna on this issue. I don't think that she should be, however, primaried. I think this is just one issue I disagree with her on. I don't want her to be gone. I don't hate Anna Paulina Luna. And I think she's generally very good at her job. And so I don't want there to be anything taken away from that little write-up. Just correcting the record for those of you who listen to me on this show. I don't think we should have congressional rules changed. I think it opens up for abuse. I think if you want to stay home with your baby, you should quit and let somebody else take your job. But I don't think that Anna Paulina Luna needs to go. I think she does a good job. And I think this is what Dan says, right? Michael, he says like +1, -1 with some of these members of Congress. Is that +1, -1? Or is it
Yep,
+1,
that's what he
-2?
says.
Sometimes it feels like +1, -2. But the point is that you have these members and it's never going to be somebody who's perfect. Like it's just never going to be that way. It's always going to be +1, -1 with these guys. And you can primary them and replace them with somebody else and you may get somebody worse. Unless you're Tom Tiffany from my district in Wisconsin 7th district. And then I agree with everything that he does. Like that guy, you guys, Tom Tiffany in Wisconsin 7th district, he votes awesome. Like I'm like, I wonder what Tom Tiffany voted on this one issue. And I'm always happy. Like the guy is just awesome. I couldn't have thought of a better person to replace my dad. Like I didn't even know what to think when he replaced him after my dad left Congress because of this heart issue with my little sister. And he has done such an incredible job. And it's so crazy. This is what I was talking about with there being so much more that we agree on than so many let on, because that district, that the 7th district of Wisconsin, kind of in the middle part of the state, a lot of farmland, and it was represented by a Democrat, David Obey, for over 40 years. And he was a very powerful Democrat. He was chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. And suddenly, my dad got into office, and that would have been 2010. The district started to shift. The Wisconsin started to shift as these working class people in the state realized that the Democratic Party, but also establishment GOP, had abandoned them. And so this was an area of Wisconsin that was Obama twice and then switched over for President Trump twice. And it's just fascinating to see there be so much actual consensus that is unrecognized as we keep hearing all of this hysteria over America has nothing in common. We are all just infighting constantly. And that was a picture of Tom Tiffany. Thank you, Michael. He's a great guy, a great replacement. And never, I think, would somebody like David Obey have imagined while he was in office that his district will be represented by somebody like my dad or somebody like Tom Tiffany. It's such a sign of the time of the changing times. What I will say is that at least no one in the GOP is as unserious and embarrassing as, of course, the most stupid Democrat representative in Congress, Representative Jasmine Crockett. I can't even believe that she said this during a hearing yesterday, but she did. Take a listen.
Say because you've been gracious is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm Black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy.
Because that is a crazy thing to say. But we know, Jasmine, we know that you're a DEI hire. I can tell. It's pretty obvious from the way that you behave. Crockett shared this story about her early career as a public defender, where she confidently requested a job despite lacking any criminal defense experience. And she told her potential employer, who I guess hired her, that they should hire her because she's Black. So Crockett is literally admitting to being a DEI hire. She admits, I had no criminal defense experience. And then she got her first job as a prosecutor after telling her employer, hire me because I'm Black. And what's most disturbing isn't just that Crockett admitted openly to being a DEI hire, it's that she sees nothing wrong with it. This is a twisted system that rewards identity over competence, and ultimately it does real harm to minorities who actually have earned their place through merit. There are Black and brown people who have worked very hard and become very accomplished because of excellence and because of hard work. But when DEI comes over the top as the default, their achievements are immediately called into question. Did they earn it, or were they just checking a box? Joe Biden said on the record that he would only pick a Black VP. And that's exactly what he did with Kamala Harris. No open competition, no search for the most qualified candidate, just race and gender. And what was the result? Kamala Harris. And it hurt her. It did. It hurt her. I mean, I think she is a DEI hire, and I think she's very dumb. But all of America, even people who like DEI, knew that she was a DEI hire. And the approval ratings were consistently underwater. And the public remarks that she made would veer into incoherence to the point where some people sincerely believe that she's just constantly tipsy. DEI does not uplift minorities, it diminishes them. It tells the world, we didn't earn our spot, that we're here for optics, not excellence. And for those of us who have actually worked and studied and sacrificed and built something real, this is a deep, deep personal insult. And nowhere is DEI worse than the university system. And part of why DEI has been able to thrive on college campuses is because of how overblown the administrations are. At most universities, the administrators outnumber the professors. And at some schools, the administrators outnumber the students. Now, if you know your history, for hundreds of years, universities conducted research and managed classrooms without bureaucrats, and non-instructional functions were handled by faculty department heads. It was kind of like these wonderful research, self-run institutions. It was kind of beautiful. And now we have all these administrators. And what do the administrators do? Because I don't think, if you're somebody who went to school 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you don't even know how bad things have gotten in the education system. Like, what have these administrators really done to the schools? I'm going to give you a few things. First of all, they make the day-to-day lives of students and professors a lot harder. So if you want to dual enroll in a course or you want to take an independent study, you have to go through like 5 different administrators. And the only person you should really need the approval of is, of course, the professors involved in this dual enrollment and then a department head. But again, you have all these barriers to just doing things that should not be this difficult. And the administrators are also responsible for DEI. These diversity and equity offices. These aren't professors running them. These are professional bureaucrats. They are the reason for the mandatory sensitivity training that students have to go through the moment they get on campus. Yeah, I had to sit through like hours of sensitivity training at UChicago. It was horrible. I also had to do multiple online courses. Every year I had to do a sensitivity online course. And of course, my freshman year, I had to be there in person. And they wouldn't let you go to class unless you I don't know if that was a real threat, like if they really wouldn't let you go to class, but they said, oh, you won't be able to go to class if you don't like complete this training in person, where they just like lectured you about diversity and equity for hours. Its administrators also mandate racial quotas that diminishes the quality of professors. So they'll say, okay, physics department, you guys have to have this percentage at least of Black and brown people, or this percentage at least of gender or sexual minorities. And then, of course, well, what does that do? That means that you're not hiring the most qualified person. You are trying to fulfill these diversity quotas. So it diminishes the quality of the instructors. And these administrators also create the speech codes on campus that chill free speech, making it against school rules to believe in things like biological reality. Otherwise, well, you're guilty of hate speech. Studies also show that university bureaucrats are even more left-wing than the professors. So leftist faculty outnumber their conservative counterparts 6-1. But leftist campus bureaucrats outnumber conservative students 12-1. It's just like a crazy number of insane left-wing bureaucrats who are running these schools who never even used to be part of the university system until really recently. My biggest gripe with the administrators is what happened during COVID. We had these communist reporting systems where they would say, okay, if you, well, it was a requirement actually. So I had to sign a document that said, basically, I agree that if I see somebody, a professor or a student violating school COVID rules, like not wearing a mask properly or not being socially distanced or whatever, then I agree to report them to the university system so that they can discipline the professor or the student who I'm reporting. Like they mandated a communist style, a CCP style snitch list. They were also responsible for the vaccine and booster mandates, the mask mandates, all of the horrible things that happened during COVID on college campuses, including expelling students for refusing to get boosters. That all was because of the administrators, who also, by the way, are a huge reason why college is so expensive today. You have to pay for all these people's jobs with your tuition dollars. So of course, this is why the education system is so incredibly expensive, way more unaffordable than it used to be. And now, why am I bringing all of this up? Because I have an incredible story to share with you. This is truly the greatest thing that I have seen all week. A Brown University student, his name is Alexis Shi, he created a public database mapping the university's 3,805 non-faculty employees, and he sent each one an email. And in the email, he asked a simple question: what do you do all day? What do you do all day? To each of them. And this email, of course, hilariously is a spinoff of what the Elon Musk Doge team sent to federal workers, requesting that they outline their job duties. And now, she said he compiled this database using publicly available information, including job postings, student newsletter, LinkedIn profiles, and then he used ChatGPT to rank administrators by their operational importance. And he said his investigation was driven by concerns over rising tuition costs, which, again, I pointed out, he's very right to be concerned about it because fees have risen over $93,000 at Brown University, and the school runs a $46 million annual budget deficit. So it's a fair question to ask these administrators, what do you do all day? I'd say the people responsible for making tuition wildly more affordable should be able to answer this question. Here was Alex.
You got that right. Last week, I sent about 3,805 emails to administrators all across Brown University to answer a simple question. Why is our tuition rising to $93,000 a year next year? And by the end of the decade, it's easily going to reach six figures. And I'll tell you where that money's not going. It's not going to the facilities, that's for sure. I'm in the basement of my dorm right now at Brown University, and this room, this floods whenever it rains. This room floods. And we've got a fan going in the background. We've got these wet floor signs all around. There's a plastic tarp on the floor that I'm sitting on right now because this room, they can't keep the basement from flooding. And we all know that those professors are criminally underpaid. So where does the money go? It goes to about 3,805 administrators. That's more than twice as many as the number of faculty that's on staff. It's also about one for every two undergrads. Brown's not a big state school. We've only got about 7,200 undergrads. And so I think it's ridiculous.
By the way, I just want to bring this up because I think Jordan Peterson said this, and it was a really good point. We have a lot of Marxist professors on campus, like a lot of Marxist professors. And this is like decades of cultural Marxist infiltration into the school system. But there's also something to be said about not paying professors very well, to where they're struggling to be professors, and then them siding with Marxism in every case because they love the idea of redistribution. Like, we should be paying our professors well. Like, we should be not paying them criminally low wages because we have to fund over 3,000 administrators who do absolutely nothing all day. And they do nothing, because Alex's email that he sent to over 3,000 got only 20 replies, including a classy F you, and another one that reads, "Stick an entire cactus up your ass." One of the administrators responded to him with that. And then Brown told all the employees not to respond, since things, they didn't want the students to expose how stupid these administrative roles are. And things then escalated really fast. Alex's social security number was leaked. His site was hacked from a Brown IP address. His inbox was flooded with porn spam. And within 2 days, he was under investigation by the university. And he won't even believe what he's under investigation by the university for. Emotional psychological harm, misrepresentation, invasion of privacy, and violation of operational rules. This kid used publicly sourced data to ask very fairly the administrators, what do you do all day? And he's being investigated by the university for emotional psychological harm and violation of operational rules. What does that even mean? Violation of what rules did he violate? And then an associate dean, whose job, by the way, Alex's model flagged as a redundant job, like a completely pointless role. This dean ordered Alex to return any confidential information that he had collected. But of course, as Alex pointed out, all of this came from public sources. This is just ridiculous. He just poked a little bit, this Leviathan, and it came out and attacked him. And this story is so incredible because it exposes the rot at the heart of modern academia, an overgrown, hyper-political bureaucracy that reacts with venom when held to account. Alex did what every concerned student should feel empowered to do: ask a basic, rational question about where your tuition dollars are going, especially when those tuition dollars are now totaling over $93,000 a year. I mean, that is insane. The school runs a massive deficit. The people are complaining constantly about student loan debt. And I know that it's really difficult for a lot of older people who paid off their student loans or who didn't have any at all to sympathize with young people who chose to take out these loans. But the reality is, if you want an education, you're going to have to take out an exorbitant amount of loans, because our education system is so expensive, because we have all of these bureaucrats who have no role in the university system. They shouldn't be there. They don't do anything. Obviously, it would be easy for them to just respond to Alex's question. Oh, well, my job is very justified. Here's why. And instead of receiving transparency, this kid got threats, vulgar insults, and a full-blown investigation for emotional harm. Like,
also, fun fact, Brown has an endowment of $7.2 billion.
And yeah, I mean, it's just absurd, the amount of money that they're fleecing from these kids and then justifying all of these roles that do absolutely nothing. It's absurd. And the reaction from a corrupt system terrified of scrutiny is really what happened here. And what's most obscene is that, again, the reaction, the university telling employees don't reply, and then Alex's social security number reportedly getting leaked, his email flooded with porn. All of this because he asked, what do you do all day? Proves the point that these administrators aren't just useless, they're hostile to accountability and actively make students' lives worse. And remember this, we don't need student debt forgiveness. We need to fire 99.9% of all these bureaucrats and restore the universities to its original purpose, which is learning, teaching, and the truth. And by the way, I think if the Trump admin really wants to have an impact on the university system and on the exorbitant amount of tuition that it costs to get an education in this country, then they would withhold funding until the schools, say, have one administrator to 100 students. Maybe not even that. Like I said, there were virtually zero administrators at universities for hundreds of years. But these guys got to go. All right, let's talk about Texas. Again, Texas is back in the news. We talked about it yesterday with this Islamic commune that I guess they're trying to create in the middle of Texas. Yesterday, the Texas House of Representatives passed a resolution honoring March 23rd as Pakistan Day, recognizing the contributions of over 80,000 Pakistani Texans. And this was authored by Representative Suleiman Lanani. And the resolution celebrates the cultural, professional, and economic impact of the Pakistani community. Here is Suleiman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm honored to recognize Pakistan Day at the Capitol. And the Pakistan Day is actually found on March 23rd, but we're celebrating it earlier today. Pakistani Texans contribute to the economic and cultural success of our state, bringing connections between Texas and Pakistan through education, business, and civic engagement. Recognizing this day here in the Texas House is not just about honoring history, but about celebrating the deep cultural and economic ties that unite us. Thank you.
On this occasion, we celebrate the heritage, achievement, and impact of all Pakistani American community, and we reaffirm our commitment to diversity, mutual respect, and collaboration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for adoption.
The question occurs in the adoption of the resolution. Is there any objection? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Okay. Now, of course, this comes amid the growing controversy over the real estate project that we covered yesterday, the Epic City, which Texas officials have criticized as a potential Sharia city. There are plans to, of course, create this over 400-acre Islamic settlement in the middle of Texas, and only 5 lawmakers voted against this Texas-recognized Pakistan Day. What are Republican lawmakers doing in Texas right now? Like, what? Texans in the chat, what the heck is going on in your state? I thought it was like, don't mess with Texas, and they bleed red. This very obviously is not only a waste of time, but it is very dumb and clearly progressive. America should not be passing legislation celebrating foreign countries or various minority groups. This is clearly wrapped up in diversity obsessions of the left. The guy said it in the soundbite I just played. Oh, to celebrate the diversity of Texas. The goal of the legislature in Texas should be to promote assimilation of Pakistanis who happen to be here. That's it. I want to celebrate you Pakistanis becoming Americans because you're here in this country. Pakistan Day resolution is pointless pandering, and it's wrapped up again in progressive identity politics, which we should be opposing at all fronts. Also, Pakistan, and this is an important point, a country where Christians are jailed and lynched for their faith, where young girls are kidnapped and forcibly converted, and where blasphemy laws terrorize religious minorities. So it's pretty absurd for Texas lawmakers to officially honor a nation that actively persecutes Christians, given that we are a Christian country. That's how we were founded. Republicans need to get a whole lot braver, a whole lot smarter. I don't know what's going on in Texas, but this was really, really stupid of them. Stop voting for this crap. It doesn't mean you hate Pakistanis. It means you aren't playing into these little identity politics games the left likes to force on everyone. Again, this is just empty pandering. It's a symbol that even in Texas, Republicans are afraid to stand firm on basic principles. We should not be normalizing foreign national pride in American legislatures. It just doesn't even make sense. What is the benefit to America to promote Pakistani pride? We don't need more celebrations of cultural enclaves. We need a unified American culture rooted in shared values. And let's be honest, if the resolution had been about honoring a Christian European country, it never would have made it to the floor. That's how deep the diversity cult has wrapped itself in even red state priorities. Texans didn't elect Republicans to rubber stamp progressive symbolism. They didn't. All right, I want to cover this New York Times article from earlier this week. So the New York Times published this piece. It's titled, "This Baby Was Carefully Selected as an Embryo." And the article explores the rapid rise of polygenic embryo screening, a technology that allows prospective parents to assess embryos for risks of various diseases and traits, from heart disease and autism to height and intelligence. And this approach goes beyond traditional single gene testing and instead uses complex statistical models to generate probabilistic risk profiles. And this technology is now being embraced by Silicon Valley elites who envision a future where sex is for recreation and baby making is outsourced to these labs. It's very sort of dystopian. And I would say Brave New World, like it's increasingly parents are encouraged to view embryos not as people, as children, but as data points to be optimized and subject to selection based on perceived utility or desirability. So in other words, children are becoming commodities with this kind of technology. And the founder of one of these embryo companies called Orchid is cited in the piece. And once the article was published, she came out on X and she shared the article with this caption. She said, "When I was in elementary school, my mom started going blind. Retinitis pigmentosa she had, and no family history, no treatments, no cure. I got lucky, she didn't. It let me build at Orchid Inc. so my baby and everyone else's gets to win the genetic lottery, avoid blindness, and hundreds of severe genetic diseases." I guess the suggestion is that it'd be better if her mom wasn't born because her mom has this horrible thing where she goes blind eventually. And I bring up Brave New World because in 1932, Aldous Huxley's book Brave New World was released, and in it, Huxley imagined a world where babies are no longer born, but they're manufactured, optimized, and sorted by genetic desirability. And back then, 1932, it was just creepy science fiction. And today, it is human life that is being reduced to a spreadsheet. It's real, it's here. What did the founder of Orchid say? She said, "I got lucky, my mom didn't, so my baby and everyone else has got to win the genetic lottery." Let that sink in. She's not just saying she wants to prevent a specific illness. She's saying some people win and some people lose the genetic lottery. And now we can pre-select winners. That's eugenics. That is just straight up eugenics. It's the commodification of children. Future people are not data points, optimized, ranked, filtered, like resumes in a job application. Except instead of getting rejected from a job, you're discarded before you're even born. And this isn't just ethically disastrous, but it's anti-human. It replaces wonder with control, love with utility, turns the mystery of life into a product design problem. Really scary stuff. Do I have time to cover erotic books, Michael, in the men's genre? All right, let's do it. The men's book world, I don't know a lot about because I don't read a lot of men's books, but I read this fascinating Substack yesterday, and it is titled, "Men's Adventure Fiction on Amazon Has a Harem Romance Problem, and It's Getting Worse." Now, let me just preface this by saying that when my dad was middle school aged, he was not an avid reader. He never really was as a young guy. And my dad was just kind of like an outdoors kid, like just constantly playing outside, just doing things that are athletic. And he was not stuck inside. He was not stuffy. He was not reading. And then something changed for him. And this is a story that my dad told us a lot growing up. So he was in eighth grade going into his freshman year. So that summer between eighth grade and freshman year. And he was riding a three-wheeler with one of his buddies, and they hit a jump. And when they hit the jump, he missed the peg on the three-wheeler to land his leg on. And his leg got caught underneath the machine. So he was kind of like halfway off it. And he ended up fracturing his leg. And he needed a full cast. And then there went his summer. He couldn't do any of the things that he wanted to do that summer because he had this full cast. And so all of his friends were trying out for football and they were swimming in the lake and just being boys outdoors. And then suddenly my dad was wildly limited by what he could do. So he sort of stuck inside. And so he started to read for the first time. And that summer he read, like literally he says, every single Louis L'Amour book. And I looked it up. There's like over 100 of them. Like he was just like, I'm just going to read every single Louis L'Amour book. Like he was obsessed with them. And from then on, he became just like an avid reader. It really changed his life. He said for the better that he broke his leg and he was forced to read that summer. And Louis L'Amour is really what men's adventure fiction used to be, like gritty westerns. And there was classic action tales, stories about heroism and grandeur like The Lord of the Rings. And the Substack details how the men's adventure genre is currently being flooded with these erotic fetish-based harem novels. And these books, they feature these AI-generated covers of like half-dressed supernatural women, so like elves, demons, cat girls. And the storyline's centered around a male protagonist who accumulates a harem of submissive female characters. And this includes titles like Trailer Park Elves. We could throw that up there, Mikey. No, we don't have that. We don't have the Trailer Park Elves one. We have Red Elf Ranch. Okay, and then we have Elf Date, a spicy elf dating fantasy. Like, this is what has become of the men adventure genre, apparently, that is now dominating books on Amazon's bestseller list. And in the male adventure category, you are not seeing so much the traditional adventure authors. We're good with that, Michael. Now, of course, this trend mirrors what happened in women's fiction. It's not just a men's problem, where the fantasy genres have been totally overtaken by these romantasy titles, like essentially romance novels disguised as fantasy. And they have a lot of pornographic elements. And the broader concern is that Amazon's lack of oversight in category management is allowing these erotic books to dominate charts where they don't belong. And it's damaging the visibility and credibility of legitimate genre fiction. And in J.R.R. Tolkien's essay on fairy stories, it's a great essay, you should all read it, Tolkien argues that fantasy and adventure help us to recover a sense of wonder and provide consolation in the face of human suffering in the real world. And male-centered adventure stories like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings provide archetypes of masculine virtue, so like courage, tempered by humility, strength, used for protection, leadership, rooted in service. These are not about domination or indulgence, but about calling men to rise beyond themselves. They teach that struggle has meaning, that evil can be resisted, that goodness is worth preserving even at great cost. And today, so many genres are flooded with shallow or cynical content, and we need long-form storytelling that strives for the noble and the beautiful and the true. A well-written, uplifting adventure doesn't just entertain, it inspires. And it reminds readers, especially young men, that their lives can be stories of honor, purpose, self-giving heroism. So surrendering long-form adventure stories to bizarre, fetish-driven erotica degrades the cultural imagination that used to be just defined by the adventure genre. And instead of forming minds with models of courage and responsibility, this is instead encouraging detachment, passivity, and distorted views of relationships. And a society that trades its heroic myths for pornographic spectacle is going to lose itself. And of course, we are. And that is all that I have for you all today. You can opt out of the raid if you want to. I know that this is very confusing, but we're going to get the hang of it. To everybody in the chat, if you look at the top of your screen, you will see an opt-out option, so you don't have to join the raid, or you can just sit tight and it will take you straight to Vince. Whatever you choose, but we're going to get the hang of this. You don't have to freak out about the raid. Just hang in there and look for the opt-out option. It is there, I promise you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to follow me on X or Instagram, my user is avitaduffy_1, and I will see you all tomorrow.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look what happened.
Hey. Why this beat so cold?
We will make America proud again. If you try to we will make America wealthy again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
guys, Trump's not starting a trade war. He's ending one.
Very, very tough traders. Uh, you think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic. 39%, we're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half. Vietnam, great negotiators, great people. They like me, I like them. The problem is they charge us 90%. We're going to charge them 46% tariff.
All right, the president of the United States laying out all of these tariffs that we will be levying against these countries. Now, To be specific, when does this happen? Well, by this weekend, a 10% flat tariff to happen across the board for all of these countries around the planet. And then next week, you saw those tariffs that the president was talking about. Next week, Wednesday, is when they all come into place. For more on what exactly we just saw and the impact it's going to have on the country, I want to bring in Oren Cass now. He's the chief economist for American Compass. Oren, good to see you here, sir.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here to talk about all this. Now, I've seen a lot of hysteria about this. This is going to impoverish us. This will destroy the economy. What is he doing? This is a massive tax increase. And then meanwhile, I've been looking at your X account and I've been seeing a lot of reasoned sobriety, which is actually President Trump's been talking about this for a long time. This isn't shooting from the hip. And there's a method to this madness. Tell us about it.
Well, to your point, President Trump ran on imposing a 10% global tariff, on putting 60% tariffs on China, on renegotiating our agreements with other allies.
Yeah.
And this is now what they're going forward and doing. And, you know, I think we've seen over the last couple of months a bunch of sort of stops and starts as they've gotten going. I think there's still a lot of fair questions about where exactly they go now. Are these supposed to be permanent? What are we actually asking other countries to do?
Right.
And so there's a long way to go on it. But the idea that this came out of nowhere, or to your point that people should be hysterical about it, I don't understand. And I think the best way to realize this is, look, we've been doing that. You know, we jumped into this free trade thing a generation ago. We decided to embrace China.
Yes.
We've seen all the costs that brought. If we're not happy with those things, if we wished we'd done it the other way, it's never too late to do it the other way.
I noticed that, at the Rose Garden yesterday, the president brought out a number of UAW members, people who work in industries who they've seen devastated over the decades. They're enthusiastic about this. The cattle ranchers in the United States are enthusiastic about it. They were releasing statements saying, it is insane to try and sell American beef around the planet. We get treated horribly. American beef is of the highest possible quality, and we want access to those markets. So the guys who actually make stuff, the agriculture guys, they seem to be on board with this.
Well, and this is the problem with how we did free trade, right? If you listen to the politicians and the economists selling free trade, they try to sell it as you Americans get to make things and sell it to the rest of the world.
Right.
But that's not what happened. What happened with free trade was we opened up our market. We took the things we used to make here, moved them away, and now we get to buy a lot of things from the rest of the world.
Yes.
And that's what you see in our trade deficit. If trade was working well, I'd love to have free trade. I'd love to be buying all sorts of stuff from around the world, people around the world buying all sorts of stuff from us. But what we got is we only got half of that deal, and it's half that does not work for American workers.
No.
And I think that's where you see a huge part of what the Donald Trump movement has been all about and what he's acting on.
So I want to talk about the formula for a second, because this I think really matters. And I hope everyone sticks with me for this, because, you know, when coming into yesterday, the basic thought that everybody was being presented with is, if your country imposes a tariff on us, we will impose a tariff on you. That's what we thought reciprocal tariffs would mean. The formula that the White House released yesterday, and it's since acknowledged is what it is, really addresses the trade deficits between all of these countries. In other words, we are buying a lot more product from, say, Japan than Japan is buying from the United States. So in turn, we're imposing a bit of a penalty on Japan. Essentially, the percentage comes out to half the trade deficit in order to make up for that trade deficit. So is this wise? Is that a wise way to construct this, do you think?
I think the important thing to say is that this did not come out of nowhere. That if you were paying attention, I'm a relatively smart guy, I guess, but I was just listening to what they were saying, what it was clear they wanted to do. I wrote a piece back in February explaining that this was exactly what they meant by reciprocal. Because the problem with reciprocal tariffs, you just hold up a mirror and do the same thing everybody else is doing.
Yes.
Is tariffs aren't necessarily what they're using. So Japan's a great example. Japan actually has some of the lowest official tariffs in the world in terms of like the tax you pay. But they have all sorts of policies that make it very hard to sell into the country, that make it much easier for their sellers to export to us.
Yes.
And so I think the president and his team are exactly right. What we're focused on is the deficit. That's what we want to fix.
Okay.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to create tariffs that look at how big the deficit is. The reciprocity, what's reciprocal, is not you do a tariff, we do a tariff.
Right.
It's if there's imbalanced trade, we are going to put tariffs in place. Probably not. We don't want them to be permanent. We want them to lead you to change your behavior.
But let me explore trade deficit for a moment, what that even means. So as I understand it, what happened yesterday is they assessed the goods deficit. So we we buy widgets from Japan. They buy very few widgets from us. That's the basic thing. But Japan buys services from the United States. Services are separate and distinct from goods. And when you include services, that actually changes the math. In some cases, countries that we have trade deficits with, we could actually assess, well, we have a trade surplus with them, actually, in terms of the way money is flowing. So is it wise to just focus on goods? Is that a key element here?
Well, I think there are two things here. One is that the good side of the equation is just much, much larger.
Yeah.
So it's true that America is very strong in services. We should be clear, you're talking about a lot of services provided by the knowledge workers, financial services,
right,
technology services. That's a much, much, much smaller piece of the pie. So when economists say, sure, we have big goods deficits, but look at our great services surpluses,
Yes.
those do not cancel each other out at all overall. The second thing, and this goes to why we care about the deficits, is that what economists got wrong for so long, and we're finally catching up on, is that making things matters. If you want to have a healthy economy, you need that industrial base. You need to actually have the manufacturing. If you want to have national security, you need to have the manufacturing.
Yes.
If you want to have strong communities and good jobs for people all across the country, you need manufacturing, agriculture, mining, all of those kinds of industries.
There's a social benefit to manufacturing.
There's a huge social benefit. And so, look, if we were a country that was like crushing it on manufacturing and didn't have any services,
right,
then you'd probably say like, well, actually, we need to be focused more on the services.
Yep.
But if you look at how our economy has evolved over the last few decades, if you look at who's been left behind, if you look at what our challenges are, the challenge is on the way that we hollowed out our industry. And so that's what this is all about, is how do you reverse that?
So how compelling is this? What Trump just did yesterday, how many countries are going to rush to get into line is really the key question, I think, because we've already seen in the last 24 hours a number of countries making ovations very quickly that they want to resolve any conflict here. We saw Israel come out and saying, we're dropping any tariffs we have. We're going to zero. Canada's saying, we're ready to drop to zero. If you drop to zero, we drop to zero, we'll all be good. Let's just do that. I'm seeing India is doing everything it can to suck up to Trump right now on this. So it does seem like it is having some impact right away. And the other piece is, as I mentioned at the top, the 10% tariff doesn't go into place until this weekend. And then the big tariffs don't go into place until middle of the week next week. Isn't that kind of an eternity in Trump time? And in the kind of thing that could get these countries to rush to the table with big offers very quickly?
I think that's definitely part of the calculation. And I would separate out that the 10% global tariff across the board, they're doing that sooner. I think the intention is that that's likely to be quite permanent, that's not going to be negotiated country by country.
Right.
Those big tariffs targeted at where we have big deficits, I think it's absolutely right to interpret those as aimed to start a negotiation. And what you just described, that what countries came out and immediately did was say, oh, we'll drop our tariffs to zero. That captures exactly why we didn't just want to do reciprocal tariffs. It would not have been good for us if the other countries just said, okay, we'll go to zero tariffs. And we said, oh, okay, great, problem solved. And so what you're seeing instead is, your point, okay, maybe that's their opening offer.
Yes.
What I think you're going to hear for the Trump administration, and what I also think they need to do a better job communicating, is no, here's what we're looking for. Trade deficits don't just emerge out of nothing. They emerge out of a lot of the policy choices that countries make. And up until now, everybody said, well, this is just an American problem. And what we're instead saying is, no, this is everybody's problem. If we're going to have free trade, everybody needs to do their part to solve it. And if we do our part, if we do get the deficits down, then that's great. Then the tariffs can come down.
So President Trump specializes in big opening moves. He does this all the time. I mean, we're seeing it right now with immigration. These videos of gangsters being flown into El Salvador and then thrown in maximum security prisons, the effect of that has been illegal immigration has stopped. Nobody's coming across the border anymore. People are self-deporting from the United States in order to avoid that fate, whether or not they're actually due to receive that fate or not. So in some sense, I know this. You have to trust Trump's judgment here, because he does things in these like giant, spectacular ways to start as an opening offer and gets everybody to fall in line as a result. So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's going to happen. The other piece here is, how big of a deal is it that we already have $5 trillion of investment that foreign countries, foreign businesses have now brought into the United States at the behest of President Trump? And do you expect to see more of that now, as these countries are like, maybe we can give big gifts to the United States to buy our way out of this?
I think that's going to be a big part of the solution, and I wouldn't even call it gifts. There's actually a very clear precedent for this, and it's actually something Ronald Reagan did. In 1981, when Ronald Reagan came into office, the Japanese auto market was crushing the American one. We were being flooded with lower cost Japanese imports.
Yeah.
Big Three was sort of on the verge of bankruptcy. And Reagan basically, under a threat of big tariffs from Congress, Reagan got the Japanese to agree to voluntarily just cap their imports. Just they said the number of cars that went in last year were just, that's it. No more, no increase in cars. Instead, what Honda and Toyota are going to do to keep serving the American market is go build factories in America. And so the entire Japanese auto industry that we now have in the United States, making investments here, employing hundreds of thousands of workers here, making the Toyota Camry actually the most American car on the road in terms of who's actually made the stuff in it. That was all a function of this kind of negotiation.
Right.
And so I think that's exactly what we want to see is, look, we know that when other countries think it's in their interest to win industries from us, to export to us, they choose policies that do that. And we're shifting that equation. We're saying, no, what is now in your interest is to fix this and to get back to balance.
Yep.
And by the way, let's just be clear on how reasonable that is, right? There's just like, oh, like the United States is now being the bully, right? We're not asking them to do anything that we wouldn't do too. We're not saying, no, now we want to be the exporter and you have to take all of our stuff instead. All we're saying is let's get rid of the distortions that have been put into the system. Let's get back to the system the way it was supposed to work.
Also, we have a lot of weight, don't we? I mean, so as I understand it, 25% of our economy is international trade. 25%. The rest is domestic. Our economy is charged by our domestic trade between the states. And so that's not the same for so many countries. There's a lot of countries who are highly dependent on American money flowing in. Their portfolios are not diversified. They're heavily dependent on our market. So in terms of just like being able to throw your weight around, we have a lot of it, don't we?
The United States has a tremendous amount of leverage. Even the 25% is an overstatement because it counts both the imports and the exports.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
If you think about as a share of GDP, as sort of a share of our economy, it's closer to 15. And to your point, for a lot of other countries, it can be upwards of 50. If you think about how dependent certainly Canada and Mexico are on their relationship with us. And then if you even think more broadly about just the role, I think something else that's very important to the Trump administration is the security side of things and the role that we play in essentially paying for everybody else's defense.
Yes.
And so, my assessment of what's going on here is that the Trump administration has said, look, this old world order where the U.S. just sort of takes everyone else's stuff and pays for everything.
Yeah.
That's over. We would like to have a great, strong alliance, economic and security, with as many market democracies as possible. But here are the requirements. Balanced trade, you pay your own way on defense, and we all agree to keep China out. And the United States, we absolutely commit to all of that too, but that's what we're looking for everybody to agree to. And if you're in, we're in, great.
Yeah.
If you're not in, we actually do have things like tariffs that we're willing to put on the table.
I want to point to what's going on with Wall Street today. We're watching as the stock market is sliding a little bit today. That's true also in global markets, which are all panicking about this. Can we finally put to bed the idea that President Trump is beholden to Wall Street? That somehow everything is motivated by what do the billionaires want? What does Wall Street want? This is definitely not one of those moves, is it?
I think that's been one of the most important pieces of all of this. And you've seen this even over the last couple of months, Treasury Secretary Bessent going out and saying, look, the American dream isn't just cheap stuff. Look, we're willing to actually pay a short-term price to turn this around.
Yeah.
Look, just because it's not good for Wall Street doesn't mean it's not good for America. And what's so funny is that all the, capital V, very serious people who spend their time on shows, complaining about American politics, complaining about people like the Trump administration, this is all they've ever said they want. They want people making long-term decisions, making short-term sacrifices, thinking about what's actually good for the country. And now we actually have it. And what are they doing? I just saw, last night, Larry Summers, the, Bill Clinton Treasury Secretary, or Obama Treasury Secretary, leading left and center economist, literally goes out there and says, you can just take the damage in the stock market, multiply it by 5 or 10, and that's the damage to America, because whatever is bad for the stock market is bad for America. This is now the position the Democrats are taking,
yes,
while the Republicans are saying, wait, the national interest is not the same as the stock market.
No. And also, tell that to Detroit, tell that to any number of American cities. who have been absolutely hollowed out by these practices. It's absurd. And so I guess this also gets to the point that like Trump ran on this, as you've been saying. This is not a secret. It's not a surprise. Actually, the only surprise is that everyone else thought he wasn't serious yet again. They thought he was joking about it. Wall Street traditionally prices in expectations, right? Where they make adjustments based on, oh, this will definitely happen in the future. They thought Trump was bluffing. They thought he was just using this as a negotiating tactic. And sure enough, yesterday, he says, no, it's Liberation Day, baby. We're doing it for real. They didn't factor this in.
And by the way, let's notice how bipartisan a lot of this actually is. When you actually look at, so Joe Biden keeps virtually all of Donald Trump's trade actions, everything he did on China. Democrats are complaining about Trump. Biden keeps basically all of it.
Yeah.
If you actually look, the recommendations on China specifically now to go even higher, pretty much exclude them altogether, that's bipartisan. House China Committee, bipartisan, also in the Trump platform. And then even if you look at this idea of the 10% global tariff, this is something that we've done a lot of work on, and we're really pleased to get a first round of legislation introduced on it. I introduced legislation is Congressman Jared Golden from Maine, who's a conservative Democrat. There is broad-based support among people who are actually focused on what's good for the country.
Yeah.
That we need to move in this direction. And ideally, I actually think getting Congress involved is really important. At the end of the day, if we want this to be credible, if we want it to be permanent, because we do want companies to succeed, we want them to succeed here. And they need to know what the policies are going to be. They need to know they should place their bets on investing here. So I would love to see the administration push on this and Congress step up on saying, this is the direction we're going. Let's actually codify this in law, and everyone knows that that's the plan.
So let me just finish on this point. This is a big move that the president made yesterday. And I am very hopeful about what comes next because, again, he ran on this and he's fulfilling the promise to voters. But it does seem like in the end, it's as a big move, it's also a gamble. This could come out great or there could be some downsides, couldn't there? So in your view, how do you expect this is going to go? And what are the risks?
Well, I think there are certainly some immediate costs. And I think it's encouraging that everyone has acknowledged that and sort of not tried to deny that they exist or claim that we can avoid them.
Yeah.
I think going forward, the big question is how well can the administration get its ducks in a row, essentially, on settling everybody down, saying this is permanent, communicating clearly, here are the conditions under which it will change. So if this is a negotiation, here are the things we're looking for. Here's what we will bargain with versus here's what's permanent. And then, as I mentioned, getting Congress involved in as well. The last piece I'd love to see the administration focus more on is what we might call the supply side, which is if we want to rebuild in America, we need to help make sure that can happen, right? We need to support the companies that are coming to invest here. We need to do a lot of work retraining workers to be able to do these kinds of jobs. And so I think like the risk is we just say, okay, we had Liberation Day, now we sit back and it's solved. Right. And I think there's a lot can still go wrong. The second risk is that we say, okay, we had Liberation Day, and now every day is a new chance to futz around with all of this.
Right.
I think that is a real downside risk. And then the upside is, no, there's actually a plan here. I think Trump's team on this is fantastic. Rubio at State, Bessent at Treasury, Miriam, Council of Economic Advisors, Jameson Greer, USTR, obviously JD Vance. I think these guys get it. I think they're very serious and thoughtful about it. And I think if Trump sort of deputizes them to now translate this vision into an actual operational plan, I think we could see a lot of success.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'm optimistic about this. Warren Cass with American Compass, chief economist there. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for
having me.
having
So grateful you could come in. And by the way, check out Warren's X account where you'll be able to find out a lot more about this. Warren has written extensively about this well before that announcement yesterday of Liberation Day. It'll help ground you and give you a very good perspective on all of this. Thanks again, Warren.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll get more into this in a moment because I do want to talk about kind of the impacts here. Also, the people who are very grateful this happened. People, for instance, UAW workers, auto workers from Detroit, who are rooting on the president of the United States, saying he's doing exactly what they voted for and why they supported him in the first place. More on that coming up. Also, your reaction in the Rumble chat. Always appreciate that. The April 15th tax deadline is coming very fast. Do you have unfiled tax returns? Can't pay the IRS? The IRS is more aggressive than ever, and the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Wage garnishments, bank levies, even property seizures, they're all on the table. You need to get ahead of this. But going up against the IRS alone, that's a mistake. Take my advice. Call the experts at Tax Network USA. They know the system. They've got an edge, a preferred direct line to the IRS. They know which agents to deal with and which to avoid. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, their genius strategies are designed to quickly settle your tax problems in your favor. Tax Network USA's attorneys and negotiators, they've already resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. Tax Network USA can help you too. But you need to move very fast. April 15th is almost here. Talk with one of their strategists today with no obligation. Stop looking over your shoulder. Put this behind you. Call Tax Network USA at 1-800-958-1000. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Vince. All right. We've got people pouring in. Our thanks again to Oren Katz. Oren doesn't have to stay in the studio. We don't have much of a process here. We just people slip in and out.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oren. Oren's gonna head out. Oren's got to travel. He's got to head home. Getting on a flight, which is why he's dressed like he's getting on a flight. So thank you again. We've got a lot of people pouring in here. People are appreciative of the interview and the deep dive. One of the things, and I've seen a lot of people in the Rumble chat. I saw while Oren was talking that people were just talking about the hysteria that's going on all around us. I'm here to tell you, and you know this from your years with Dan, and you definitely know this from our many years of watching President Trump. What we need right now, and I don't mean this in any way as an insult to the ladies. We need masculine sobriety right now. There's fire going on around you, and you're the one who's riding out the storm, knowing exactly what the future holds. Knowing that, yep, we've got to go through it a little bit. That's what we need right now. And in the midst of all this, how many news cycles have you and I sat through where the whole world is going apoplectic, crazy about everything? Something Trump said, some random press conference, some misinterpretation, some random Washington Post claim about the words that came out of his mouth. Oh, he's awful. This is what he's attempting to do. Or look at COVID or any of these other scandals, everything. Every one of these news cycles, there's a reason Dan Bongino came up with the Bongino rule. Every single time you got one of these news cycles that start with immense hysteria, usually if you look back on it, it's the people who kept their feet planted and were sober about what was going on and were thoughtful about it and waited for more data and said, okay, let me process this. Those are the ones in the end that you should look back and you should trust, because they're the ones who actually cared about what was actually going on and didn't join the latest emotional panic bandwagon. So no more of those. How about that? And here, this is not a surprise. President Trump ran on this. President Trump ran on this exact principle, restoring American greatness. What does that mean? American greatness means restoring American manufacturing. It means restoring American communities. It means getting rid of the blight, making them less desolate, making them worth living in, getting rid of the drugs. The reality is too many people in Washington have spent too little time in what they refer to as flyover country. But if they even drove half an hour outside of the nation's capital in many cases, or half an hour outside of the finance center of New York City, or half an hour, they don't even have to drive that far in LA, what they're going to encounter is an America that's a lot sadder than it used to be. That's a lot more beaten up than it used to be, and a lot more hollowed out than it used to be. And so President Trump was elected now multiple times on a promise to fix that. We had tariffs in Trump's first term. I just want to remind everyone. And guess what happened during that time? Did inflation skyrocket? No, inflation sat at 1.5%. That's what you want when it comes to the Trump administration. It was a much better environment. The economy was rocking under President Trump. When President Trump introduced the tax cuts in the first place, very few people in media will ever admit this to you, but when President Trump introduced the tax cuts, by the next year, government revenues had increased in the government. And that's with tax cuts. The reason for that, of course, is that the American economy became more productive in that environment. And so here, President Trump has a plan. This is his first year. He's not even to 100 days yet. And his plan is to reorder the global trade system around what's good for America, to restore American industry and manufacturing, to induce international investment in the United States, and then to provide tax cuts huge multi-trillion-dollar tax cuts to the American people. So will that result in a savings for you? You bet it will. If the president's delivering massive tax cuts to you, that means you get to keep more of your money and then spend it on whatever you'd like to spend it on. And as time goes on, that'll be increasingly American-made products made in flourishing American communities for perfectly good American prices. So there's a lot of excitement here. I want to share with you some footage from that Rose Garden yesterday. As there's a great UAW member who got a chance to speak yesterday. I'll share that with you here in just a moment. But we've got to thank our sponsors. We do have to keep this show free, which is the plan. And the reason we can do that is the great sponsors who make it happen. You know, I love Blackout Coffee. I adore Blackout Coffee. It tastes phenomenal. And Blackout Coffee is a great sponsor. And John is the owner of Blackout Coffee. He's the real deal. He built it from the ground up. He doesn't compromise on quality or values. This is America First coffee, roasted fresh right here in America. No woke nonsense, just bold, strong coffee. American coffee for people who actually get stuff done. And as you know, Blackout Coffee has just been the official coffee of everybody here at Silverlock, led by the great Paula Bongino. You know that this is a brand that stands for the right values. Here's the deal. John is hooking all of us up. If you head over to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince and use the code Vince, that's VINCE, you'll get 20% off your first order. So you want whole bean coffee, ground coffee, instant coffee that doesn't suck? Blackout Coffee provides. They've got you covered. Support a company that actually shares your values. Blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince for 20% off your first order. And make America healthy again, baby. Oh man, I've got some good footage coming up on Make America Again, Make America Healthy Again. You're gonna love it. You will adore what I'm gonna share with you. The Maha movement is out in full force. Thank God. I'm inspired. Of course, I've been making my own health and fitness a priority, and I've been working with Jacked Up Fitness, an amazing American company. Don, the owner at Jacked Up Fitness, he was just at my house last week. We had pizza together. Not the healthiest thing, but it was a fun pizza night after he and his team built a Power Rack Pro right in my house. Their commercial grade Power Rack Pro has everything that you need to get a full body workout from home. They've got the cable crossover system, integrated 200-pound weight stacks, a Smith machine. You can do hundreds of exercises. I feel like I've already done hundreds of exercises all on a machine that's right there in my house. Basically everything you can do at the gym. My wife, my kid, myself, we love this. We've been hanging all over this machine. It's great. Having a badass all-in-one Power Rack Pro right there in the home is a game changer for my family. It will be for yours. And also, they've got the Get Jacked Up program that'll help you. They've got full-body video workouts led by celebrity trainers Kim Lyons and Clark Bartram. You just press play and you follow along. It's great, especially if you're just getting started. So listen, I'm doing this, of course. You should too. Let's do it together. Go to getjackedup.com. Sign up to access the program right now for free. And when you're ready to order your Power Rack Pro, you can save 10%. Use the promo code Vince. No more excuses. It's going to be epic. Go to getjackedup.com. Get jacked up, baby. Woo. Let's see. So I do have this gentleman who was these American auto workers. Very excited. This is cut 6. Listen to this UAW member, longtime auto worker. He's seen Detroit absolutely hollowed out by Washington. And he says, thank God President Trump is here. Take a look.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in Macomb County, known as the home of the Reagan Democrats. My first vote for president was for Ronald Reagan. I thought that was going to be the best president I ever saw in my lifetime until Donald J. Trump came along. I have watched my entire life, I have watched plant after plant after plant in Detroit and in the metro Detroit area close. There are now plants sitting idle. There are now plants that are underutilized. And Donald Trump's policies are going to bring product back into those underutilized plants. There's going to be new investment. There's going to be new plants built. And the UAW members, and I brought 20 of them with me, they're sitting right over here. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%. So, Mr. President, we can't thank you enough. And in 6 months or a year, we're going to begin to see the benefits. I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road.
Yeah, not every president brings workers in for a major announcement like this. And yet there you have guys working on the front lines of American auto manufacturing. UAW members there. Of course, Democrats seething. How did they get the UAW? By actually caring about what they care about, which is their jobs, their livelihoods, and their families. What can we do for you? Democrats have spent years selling them out. How did the UAW benefit from his relationship with Democrats? They didn't. They got screwed by that. Imagine, you just give your money to your abuser every single month. And that's what the UAW has been doing. They're turning over a new leaf, working with President Trump because they need to survive. President Trump is trying to rescue them. So really nice to see that. Nice to see the president just take normal Americans, bring them to the White House, and support them in that way. Also, it's not just the auto industry; it's also the steel workers. They're all very excited. Cut 3, take a look. Auto and steel workers pumped about what President Trump announced yesterday.
What was your reaction to the president's announcement on tariffs today? What do you think?
Very excited about it. A lot of my brothers and sister steel workers, like Brian, were very excited about it because we saw what it did back in 2018. It definitely made a difference in the market. It held back all the influx of all the stuff coming over from everywhere else. Saved a lot of jobs. Did a lot of good for us. As an American, just as a country, it did a lot. But for the steel industry, it definitely helped us. The more that we can sell more American vehicles and stop this influx of all these imports, it increases everything. The steel industry, with the aluminum industry, with everybody that supplies everything for every vehicle that every American owns. It's going to increase. It's going to create more jobs. It's going to be much better. Tax revenue. It's everything's going to be so much better for all of us. And I think it's a very positive thing. Is what's happening today.
Yeah, America's not a stock ticker. America's over 300 million people who live here. What is good for this country? What is good for the people who live here? So, of course, the auto workers, the steel workers, excited about this. They got a chance to see what it looked like in term 1. They're very happy to see what's happening now in term 2. That's great. The Treasury Secretary is Scott Bessent. He has been, speaking of sobriety here, this guy has been sober and steady throughout all of this, explaining it in very educated ways, what's happening and why President Trump is making this course correction. He was asked yesterday, this is cut 2, about whether or not prices are going to go up dramatically for Americans. We have every right to be concerned about the impact on prices. What will they be? Here is Scott Bessent with an answer to that question.
For someone who says that this money coming in is really a tax on consumers, what do you say?
I say a couple of things. One, we're seeing the CEO of Walmart is pushing back on his Chinese suppliers, and he is telling them they have to eat all the tariff increases. They're the largest retailer in America. I think 40 million Americans go into Walmart every week. We saw in Trump 1.0, prices didn't go up. And if we have that happening at the same time, we are able to use that income to provide President Trump's tax agenda. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, excuse me, no tax on overtime, and making auto interest deductible for American cars. That's a home run for working class Americans.
You hear the second half of that part is tax cuts. What are we going to do in order to help Americans get more of their own money back? Which is a huge component to this, not to be lost in any of this conversation whatsoever. That's the president's agenda, what Scott Bessent is laying out there. And the impact on prices, I think it was Howard Lutnick who came out and made this argument. One of the White House officials did. And they were saying, look, you have to understand that if one product gets tariffed, the price of that product does not go up commensurate exactly to the level of the tariff. It doesn't. In fact, what ends up happening is that buyers will go to other markets to buy the same product, or they'll come right to the United States to buy the same product at a much lower price. And so that means that the country that has a tariff imposed on their products, they can't raise the price of that product exactly with the tariff, or else that product's not going to sell at all. It's not going to sell at all. The equivalent here is, say you own a house and you're trying to sell it, and there are buyers out there for that house, and then in your community, there's a massive property tax on your home. Well, the buyer's going to say, well, wait a second, I'm not going to go to the community with the massive property tax. I'm going to go to a different community where I can get a better price on a home. I've got options here. The buyer has options. The person who's locked in the house, they've got fewer options in terms of how they sell it. So they're going to have to eat a loss in order to make their house competitive on the market. Yeah, that's right. The property tax is really crappy here. I'm going to lower the price in order to gain access to that market of buyers. This is what happens. This is what happens with tariffs. And here you have the Trump administration saying, we're going to restructure this around what's good for the United States of America, which is really, really critical here. Yeah, it's called market substitution, says Replicant Alpha, laying out all of that. Excellent, excellent stuff. We're the biggest buyers. We'll say, nope, I'm buying elsewhere. This fifth dimensional BS. So it's really great. Yeah, people are very fired up here about what the president is doing and demonstrating a lot of that. What do I call it? Masculine sobriety in this issue. Scott Besson is also cut for warning other countries. Now's not the time to fight with us. You've already attacked us. We're defending ourselves. Don't you dare escalate here.
You look at this list of all these countries, and there's some policy decisions here. China is at 34%, added to the 20% already, so that's 54% on Chinese goods.
Yes.
Are they going to come back with something big?
Well, we'll see what they do. Is my advice to every country right now is do not retaliate. Sit back. Take it in. Let's see how it goes, because if you retaliate, there will be escalation. If you don't retaliate, this is the high water mark.
If you don't retaliate, this is the worst it's going to get. In fact, that water can recede if you start behaving yourself, if you reorient your purchases towards the United States of America. That's what Scott Besson is announcing. Now, I just want to dwell for a moment on the timeline, and I talked about it with Oren Cass at the top of the episode. And if you joined us late, go check that out. Oren's brilliant, smart guy, really offered a lot of explanations for what we're seeing this week. The timeline is amazing. Think about this. President Trump says by Friday, everyone's going to get a 10% tariff around the planet. But by Wednesday of next week, everybody's going to get some shifting scale, massive tariff placed on their country based on the trade deficits that we have with them. That means they have less than a week now to quickly come up with a way to get this to stop, to suck up to the United States, to make President Trump happy. They have less than a week. They don't have a lot of time. Certainly, it's in many ways an eternity in Trump time, but not an eternity for these countries. They've got to move quickly. And that means what? They don't have time to devise crafty strategies to try and evade us. They don't have time to try and figure out a way that they can pull the wool over our eyes. They need to move with incredible speed in order to try and forestall this or stop it altogether. That's what they need to do. So the president gave them this tiny little window of time to quickly react to what he just announced. And that's it. This is the only opportunity they're going to get. They better make it good. They better make the offer strong. They better reorient quickly. And yes, I'm seeing some temper tantrums. A couple of countries going, no, we're not changing anything, or we might impose tariffs on you. That's fine. That's fine. Then get ready for suffering, because that's what you're in for. Beyond that, though, everybody else, I'm seeing a lot of quick ovations going on from a number of countries who are already saying, we're dropping our tariffs, we're dropping our barriers, we'll buy American, we'll invest in America. Expect a lot more in the days ahead. I think some more apples are going to be shaken out of this tree. I think a lot is going to get shaken out in the next few days. So once again, hold, because I think it'll be worth holding in the end. It's going to be good. It's going to be very good. More, says Chaos Born. I love that. Okay. Let me move now into something else. I want to talk about health. I want to talk about healthcare. There's a fella called Callie Means. Callie Means, for a long time, he was a healthcare lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and he worked in that health industry, and he learned a lot, and he became horrified by what he was learning. And by now, you may know Callie Means. If you don't, you should. Callie is a fella, and he's got a sister named Casey Means. I usually get them mixed up because sometimes Casey is a guy's name too, so I'm not sure which one's which. Trust me, they're worth following. Callie and Casey Means. By now, you probably know about them if you're on board with the Make America Healthy Again movement, as I am. They're brilliant, and they're really, really good. They're really good at saying, hey, there's a huge problem with the American food supply, and it's been aided and abetted by the government. There's a huge problem with nutrition guidelines that the government has been pushing on the American people for a long time. They're not designed for your health. They're designed to enrich some of the wealthiest food companies on the planet. That's the way they were built. There's a huge problem with pharmaceuticals, as you know. And there's a huge problem with chronic disease that Americans are becoming sicker in a world where we've never had access to more drugs. It certainly seems like health is not improving, and yet the big pharmaceutical companies have become richer than ever. Hello, Pfizer, I mean, which of course is given unbelievable sums of money by our own government and then given all sorts of lawsuit protections in the midst of all these COVID jabs. And they were allowed to advertise. The government did the advertising for them without ever mentioning side effects to any of these drugs. There's massive corruption in this industry. It's an industry that's in bed with people like Anthony Fauci. It's the medical establishment literally created COVID. So not to be trusted here. And so Callie Means is working with RFK Jr. at the Department of Health and Human Services. And this week, the big news out of HHS is they're firing a lot of people. They're firing about 20,000 people from HHS, saying we've got to get rid of a lot of these bureaucrats. This is not an agency that's been serving the American people well. And we need to focus on health. We need to focus on chronic disease. We need to focus on the explosion in autism, the explosion in obesity, the explosion in autoimmune disorders. We have so many things that are worth tackling, and we've made no progress on them. In fact, things have only gotten worse in the United States of America. So all of you need to go. Callie Means was sitting down with Politico this week. They did one of these big Politico interviews on stage. And the interviewer, a woman called Dasha Burns, was treating him like he was a caveman. That like, what's wrong with you? Firing all these experts. Why are you firing all these scientists? People are going to die because of this. And Callie Means was having none of it, and he shouldn't have been. And so he decided that he would go full Leonidas, not just on the woman on stage, but in every healthcare lobbyist sitting in the crowd. Take a look at this moment, which deserves a big audience. Take a look at this.
There's real problems, and you know, when you turn on CNBC, it's just a nonstop. It's a nonstop infomercial for pharma. It's a Sky Rizzi commercial followed by Scott Gottlieb saying how Bobby's killing people, followed by a breathless coverage of the measles outbreak and no mention of
but Callie,
the mental health crisis.
How does cutting a bunch of HHS solve that problem?
It is insane. It is insane for you to insinuate that the thing standing between us and better health is more government bureaucrats. Like that's demonstrably
That's not what I'm insinuating.
That is what everyone's
saying.
That
is what she's saying.
Absolutely insane to insinuate that it's some crime.
It's not all bureaucrats. It's a lot of scientists. It's researchers. It's people who are making sure that
those scientists fundamentally have overseen, just demonstrably, a record of utter failure. It would be insane. Is that funny? Is that not true? I'd love to hear how, so what metrics would you guys point to for how the scientific community, how the 4 times more per capita on healthcare spending that we spend in America versus other countries has produced innovation? Has there been one single chronic disease medication in modern American history that has lowered rates of the chronic disease? It is appropriate that the American Academy of Pediatrics right now, which is 90% funded by pharma, is pushing Ozempic on 6-year-olds. That is what the medical authorities are doing.
That is what the medical authorities are doing. They're pushing Ozempic on 6-year-olds. It's a disgrace. And don't you love that attitude? How pumped are you? This guy was like, okay, bring it on. You know, let me just give you a sense. I don't know exactly how who paid for Politico's event, but here's the way it works in DC. These events, you ever see these news events where basically a media company like Politico, they will do a stage show like what you just saw, where they'll do a live interview on a stage with a number of guests. The point of those events is to make Politico a lot of money. Those are paid for by massive sponsors. Those are revenue generating events. Those are not simple news gathering exercises. Those are some of the core means by which these news outlets are making their money. And so who pays for those events? Massive corporate sponsors do. And those corporate sponsors, one would assume for an event like that, would include the pharmaceutical company. The audience is packed with pharmaceutical lobbyists who are there, who are probably given tickets by the sponsors who bought the event in the first place. So they bring in Callie Means, and the reason for that, the reason he's so newsworthy, he's an HHS official. He's a special government employee working for RFK Jr., working with him, helping inform his judgment here. thinking that they can corner him, embarrass him, do this at an event that's sponsored by these organizations. Again, I'm making assumptions here. I didn't look to see who their corporate sponsors were, but I've seen this happen a million times. And he goes on that stage and he goes, "Bring it on, suckers. Every single one of you." He had lobbyists for pharmaceutical companies laughing at him disdainfully for saying something that was completely true, which is that these agencies haven't helped us. And by the way, why would pharmaceutical lobbyists be mocking him for the harsh position he's taking on government employees? Why would they be doing that? The answer is because these agencies are captured. That's why. It's because these agencies are hardly distinguishable from the corrupt entities that own them. They're all on the same team. These aren't separate. It's not industry and government being at loggerheads with one another, not in the world that the left has certainly created, not in the world that Washington has created for so long. They're all on the same team. They're wearing the same uniform. And so Callie Means gets on that stage and goes, "You're all full of crap, and you're hurting children, and you're hurting Americans. All you're doing is maintaining their illness. You're not providing cures. You're not providing solutions." This is a Washington that told you that the solution to COVID was to lock yourself inside of your house, to wear a mask, to hang plastic sheeting around every element of your life, to not go outside, and to jab yourself with an experimental drug. That was the solution. And meanwhile, in real life, the actual solution to the disease of COVID is lose weight, go for a jog, get out in the sun, go live your life is the solution to that. Natural immunity is a solution to that. And now, thank God, or how pumped are you about the people that President Trump has in his administration right now? RFK Jr. is in, Jay Bhattacharya, Marty McCary, Callie Means is in there. This doesn't happen because the game in this case is rigged. This happens because we're going to end the rigging. These are the people who are being brought in to be the wrecking balls, to destroy that system. And so there's a theme here that I want to dwell on just for the whole show, which is there are people who claim that ludicrously that Trump, because he's a billionaire, is therefore owned by Wall Street. And no question, there are rich interests who are trying to constantly get in President Trump's ear to advance their own stake. That happens for every president of the United States. They definitely try to do that. But what? Owned by Wall Street? You've got to be psychotic to walk away with the assessment that everything President Trump is doing is merely for like his own enrichment or Elon Musk's enrichment or for Wall Street's enrichment. It's pathetic. And it's the most brain dead analysis you can possibly summon, especially in light of the fact that what he's actually doing is working for the little guy relentlessly. And then on this issue of health, President Trump's not captured by the healthcare industry. He's not captured by the bureaucrats. He just fired Anthony Fauci's wife this week. Did you know that? Anthony Fauci's wife was still working within HHS as a bioethicist. She was just canned this week by the Trump administration. Also, what kind of bioethics was she doing? She presided over the period where COVID was created by the government and then got unleashed and then started mandatory injections on our troops. It's madness. And so that system is being broken, and the convulsions that you are witnessing in the corporate media and on like absurd corporate media stages and over our airwaves in many cases, those convulsions are the convulsions of a captured, corrupt establishment, furious that you are finally going after them. That's what they're upset about. That's what we're seeing today. And we're seeing a lot with this, with the reaction here to Trump's tariff policies. Again, go look up Casey and Callie. I'm gonna have them on the show. We'll get these guys, at least one or two of them, on. They reached out very early. One of their reps reached out really early to say that they're available. So hell yeah, we're gonna get them in here. And also at some point we'll have RFK Jr. I'll ask the audience here. Chat. Do you want RFK Jr. to stop by the show? Is that a yes? I'm getting some yeses. Dogmom 1000 says yes. Let's see. And if anybody in RFK's orbit's listening, pay attention here. The audience is asking right now. Heck yeah, yes, yes, hell yes. Fellas, put the chat up. I just want to make sure RFK Jr. can see this. Yeah, I think it's pretty overwhelming. I think the reaction here. We do have a no. Somebody put a no. That's a troll no. I can tell that. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, we'll get him in here. Who, by the way, he's got the Jacked Up Fitness machine at HHS. Yeah, Jacked Up Fitness, they wanted to give RFK a machine, and so they made a donation there. And RFK said, I guess somebody at HHS said, sure, we'll take the machine. But of course, RFK was like, I can't just take it in my office. HHS, everybody who works here needs to have access to this thing. So they put the machine up right there in the building so everybody can use it. They can all get jacked up. Look at this. Yes, yes, yes. I'm telling you, you knows, the people who are dropping no's right now, you're trolls. And I love you. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. No, we do need to hear from this guy. Even if you disagree with him fundamentally, if you're like, RFK Jr. is crazy, you know what? You're allowed to have that opinion, and I'm happy to have him in because I'd like to talk to him because what is the point of all of this if we can't hold our government officials accountable? What is the point of all of this if we can't talk to these guys and find out what they're actually thinking? Because this is an agency that wields incredible power over the entire health industry in the country, and we desperately need to get this thing fixed. And he's been tackling everything, whether it's the food industry, getting out like the harmful dyes, going after the stuff that's poisoning people, the chronic diseases. What's going on with our groundwater? What chemicals are they injecting into literally everything that you're consuming? Beef tallow. You fellas like beef tallow? So can people talk in such a way that people can hear you? Justin, are you a beef tallow guy? Oh, okay. So the guys say they can't do that right now, but they like beef tallow. Justin likes beef tallow. I don't know if I've ever had the beef tallow. Does it really make a big difference? You can taste it? Steak and Shake. Well, I don't have a Steak and Shake near me right now. You guys are in Florida, so you have Steak and Shakes all over the place. Okay, we're gonna have RFK on and talk to him about beef tallow and everything else. I gotta try the tallow. Everybody keeps telling me to try the tallow, so I'm gonna do that. Hey, guys, would you keep your feedback coming? All of you, everybody in the chat. God bless you. We got 62,500 people in the Rumble chat. Keep the feedback coming. What you like about the shows, what you don't like about the shows, feel free. I like all the feedback. I've got a thick skin. I like it. And I do feel like we're really finding our stride here with this program. And one of the things, just to give you sort of an insider perspective, we always debate how we structure the show, where we put the interviews, where we emphasize different things in the program. That debate is always going on. The goal here is to be maximally informative, to make this hour worth your time so that you can consume it, be a little entertained, find out about some cool stuff, find out what's really going on in the world, and hear from experts who really know their crap. So I'm really grateful. Oh, somebody doesn't like the set. That's fine. You don't have to like the set. The set, by the way, just so everybody knows, is temporary. We're here with the generosity of Rumble. This is Rumble's studio. They're just lending us the space right now. We're building a brand new studio for me right now, and as soon as it's locked and loaded, we'll be in there, baby, and we'll be doing the show from there. So I'll give you updates as we go. I owe you more updates on all the nitty gritty behind the scenes. But God bless you. I can't be more grateful to speak to this great audience. And here, Rumble, it's an amazing place with a bunch of amazing hosts, including your next host, Steven Crowder. Stay tuned for that during the Rumble raid. Great to have you with us today.
On Rumble, that means it's 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 God's time, Central. I'm on God's time. So that's us. And then Tim Pool is going to be after us. We're actually going to have Viva Fry on the show today, who is actually up at 3